Chapter 1981. The four of them stood at the top of the mountain and concealed their aura. They looked at the beast tide and Mu Tianyang in front of them with deep shock on their faces. With his own strength, he could actually clash with such a terrifying beast tide. Moreover, there were four monarch god-level beast emperors. This person's means were also terrifying. First, there was Zhang Haoyin. Now, there was the even more terrifying Mu Tianyang. Most importantly, they were unknown in the past. Who exactly were these two people? Qin Feiyang smiled and said telepathically, "Brother Hua, don't say that I'm not honest. The opportunity is right in front of you. Quickly make your move." Me? Hua Yi was stunned. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Brother Jiang, aren't you making things difficult for me? Still hiding?" Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang raised their eyebrows. It seemed that this person did not want to show his true strength. That's not right. The four girls must have a lot of soul stones, but he's still holding back and not making his move. Qin Dage, Sister Rushuang, don't you think this is strange? It feels like he doesn't care about these soul stones at all. Fire Lotus said telepathically, "That's right. This person isn't even afraid of the black dragon. Why would he be afraid of these people?" Qin Rushuang raised her eyebrows. There's only one explanation. This person doesn't lack soul stones. Perhaps his true identity is even more shocking than Nye Yun's, Qin Feiyang said to himself. Then why is he following us like this? Does he have the same intentions as Nye Yun? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Who knows? However, the feeling he gives me is the same as before. There's a hint of familiarity amidst the unfamiliarity. Qin Feiyang said telepathically. Why don't we just find a chance to control him and read his memories? Qin Rushuang suggested. His cultivation is higher than mine. I can't control him. Besides, although we all know that he's hiding his strength, we don't know how much he's hiding. What if he's stronger than us? So, let's not take the risk and wait and see. Similarly, if he doesn't have any ill intentions, then if we expose him, it will instead break the current balance. Perhaps when the time comes, it will backfire. Qin Feiyang thought. All right then, hurry up and get rid of them. Let's continue our journey. Qin Rushuang transmitted her voice. Qin Feiyang nodded and led the three to the foot of the mountain. He said in a low voice, "Wait for me here." With that, he flew towards the peak of the mountain alone. It's great to have a concealment technique. Hua Yi was endlessly envious. Those who don't lack soul stones are even better. Fire Lotus said, "You don't lack soul stones?" Hua Yi was stunned. He suspiciously looked at the Fire Lotus and asked, "Who doesn't lack soul stones?" "Who knows?" Fire Lotus shrugged. On the mountain peak, as they watched Mu Tianyang battle the four beast emperors, the four girls grew increasingly shocked. There was also a strong sense of greed in their eyes. The reason why Mu Tianyang could collide with the beast tide and fight the four beast emperors was entirely because of that bloody blade. They were also people who had seen the world. Therefore, they could judge that the bloody blade was at least a divine weapon that surpassed the peak level. Who wouldn't be tempted by such a divine weapon? Therefore, they all wanted to snatch it and take it for themselves. However, they didn't know that a crisis was approaching at this moment. I say, the four of you, don't keep looking in front. Pay attention to your back. A laugh suddenly rang out. Following that, one-eyed dragon and baleful ghost screamed as their heads exploded like watermelons. What? Seeing this scene, the girl and Zhang Yunfei's expressions changed, and they immediately turned around to look. But in the void in front of them, there wasn't even a shadow. What's going on? The two of them were bewildered. I've already said that you must pay attention to your back. Why didn't you listen? Qin Feiyang's voice rang out again, and it was right behind their ears. The two of them felt their hair stand on end. They immediately realized that it was the concealment technique. Boom. The two of them released their divine power. But just as they released their divine power, they suddenly felt that something had poked the back of their heads. Following that, two murderous auras appeared. The next moment, the two of them screamed in despair as their heads exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. When the corpses of the two men fell to the ground, Qin Feiyang also revealed himself. He lowered his head and looked at the four corpses. His expression didn't change at all. Then, he bent down and took the 4 Qiankuan rings. After binding them with blood, he carefully examined them. Whoosh! Hua-Yi, Fire Lotus, and Qin Rushuang also flew up. Looking at the headless corpses on the ground, Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang's expressions didn't change at all. But Hua-Yi's mouth twitched violently. 4 perfect realm war gods were killed in seconds just like that. They died without any value. After a while, Qin Feiyang withdrew his gaze and looked at Qin Rushuang and Hua-Yi with a smile on his face. How is it? Qin Rushuang asked. A total of 200,000 soul stones? There are even more divine gems. At least 300 million in total, not including the herbs and elixirs. Qin Feiyang smiled. 200,000. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus looked at each other. 200,000 soul stones. Including Nye Yun and Cripple, they had obtained a total of 300,000 soul stones. This unexpected wealth was really exciting. Qin Rushuang came back to her senses and urged, "Let's go, let's go. There are still 100,000 soul stones waiting for us." Fire Lotus covered her mouth and laughed. "Sister Rushuang, it's not just 100,000 soul stones. There are also peak divine skills and divine weapons." Yes. This assessment was really worth it. Qin Rushuang was so happy that she forgot about home. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He secretly sent the Qiankuan rings to the ancient castle. Then, he went around the beast tide and headed straight for the hinterland. As for Mu Tianyang, he was not in the mood to care. It would be best if he died under the beast tide. Ninth Heaven Palace. Inside the palace, these 2 young people are really terrifying, especially this Zhang Haoyan. Not only did he easily change the target of the beast tide to Mu Tianyang, but he also saw through Nye Yun's disguise and obtained so many soul stones. The biggest winner of this assessment is undoubtedly him. It's a pity. Yes? What a pity. If he didn't slander Ninth Heaven Palace, he would be a talent worth nurturing. The group was filled with regret. Mu Tianyang is not bad either. That blood blade, according to my judgment, should be a legendary divine weapon, and his brain is not much worse than Zhang Haoyan's. We can nurture him with all our might, someone else said. However, they did not know that the blood blade had not fully recovered yet. The black-haired old man scanned the crowd and suddenly said, "You all only paid attention to Zhang Haoyan and Mu Tianyang. Did you not notice that young man called Mu Qing?" Mu Qing? The group raised their heads and looked at Mu Qing, who was standing beside Guosweki, with puzzlement in their eyes. When Zhang Haoyan was in stealth mode, even we didn't know where he was. However, this Mu Qing was able to discover his location at the first moment. And I also found a problem. From the start of the assessment until now, Zhang Haoyan's whereabouts seemed to be under the control of this Mu Qing. Isn't this strange? The black-haired old man said. It seems to be the case. How did he do it? Everyone started discussing. This Mu Qing, although his strength and methods are not as good as Mu Tianyang's, according to this old man's observation, Zhang Haoyan seems to be afraid of this person. The black-haired old man said thoughtfully. Everyone looked at Mu Qing again, and the expression in their eyes changed. The black-haired old man said, "In addition, this old man has a question in his heart." What question? Everyone was suspicious. This old man has a feeling that whether it is Nye Yun's group of 6 or the beast tide, they are all targeting Zhang Haoyan. And this old man has a feeling that someone is manipulating all of this behind the scenes. The black-haired old man said. Hearing this, the others were puzzled. But Feng Yuan's eyes trembled slightly. The black-haired old man said again, "And why do Nye Yun's group of 6 have so many soul stones?" First Elder, as the son of the city lord of Star Sea City, it is not strange that Nye Yun has tens of thousands of soul stones on him, right? Feng Yuan could not sit still and looked at the black-haired old man. Nye Yun is not strange, but what about the other 5? More importantly, the number of soul stones on them is so similar. This gives this old man the feeling that someone gave them the same number of soul stones before the assessment. The black-haired old man said. Feng Yuan could not help but panic. The black-haired old man pondered for a while and said, "The more this old man thinks about it, the more strange it is." After the assessment is over, Not only do we have to investigate Mu Tianyang's identity, but also the cause of the beast tide. Speaking of this, the black-haired old man looked at a purple-clothed woman below and said, Shangguan Fenglan, this matter will be handed over to the law enforcement hall. Yes. The purple-clothed woman stood up and responded respectfully. Feng Yuan glanced at the purple-clothed woman and then at the black-haired old man. A cold light flashed in the depths of his old eyes. Back to Qin Feiyang and the others. Avoiding one monarch god-level beast after another, they finally arrived at the hinterland in the evening. Along the way, they could be said to be treading on thin ice and did not dare to be careless for a moment, because there were too many monarch god-level beasts. The four of them stopped at the top of a mountain and scanned the front. Qin Feiyang secretly said, There is still a distance to Ninth Heaven Palace. We must be especially careful. This hinterland was even more terrifying. Monarch god-level beasts were everywhere. If they were not careful, their lives would be in danger. Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang nodded. Hui chuckled and said, Let me lead the way. I promise to bring you to Ninth Heaven Palace safely. You? The three of them looked at Hua Yi in surprise. Yes. Along the way, I haven't done anything. I have to show some value, otherwise, how shameful would it be? Hua Yi said. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed, saying, All right, next, we will listen to you. Let's go. Follow me. Hua Yi called out and plunged into the forest below. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other and followed closely behind Hua Yi. In the Sky Dragon Mountain range, they definitely could not fly or teleport, because this was equivalent to a ready-made target. Therefore, they had to use the surrounding environment as a cover to avoid being discovered by the beasts. Chapter 1982. Don't talk about it. Under Hua Yi's lead, they were able to accurately avoid the monarch god-level beasts every time. This made Qin Feiyang even more curious about Hua Yi's identity. To know so much about the Sky Dragon Mountain range, this was not something an ordinary person could do. Midnight dawn. Qin Feiyang and the other three stopped and looked up at the giant peak in front of them. The giant peak towered like a sharp sword. On the peak of the mountain, clouds lingered and a stairway to heaven could be vaguely seen. That's right. That was the Ninth Heaven Palace. In other words, after a long journey, they had finally completed the assessment. Swoosh. Suddenly, Qin Rushuang took the lead and rushed to the peak of the mountain. Brother Jiang, shouldn't we trust each other more? Look at her. She's afraid that I'll beat her to it. Hua Yi's face darkened as he looked at Qin Feiyang angrily. Don't worry, you'll get your share. Qin Feiyang smiled and also rose into the sky. If not for Hua Yi leading the way, they would not have been able to pass through the hinterland and reach the Ninth Heaven Palace so easily. Hua Yi caught up and laughed. How much are you going to give me? This? Qin Feiyang was stunned and pointed at Qin Rushuang in front of him. It depends on her. Then I won't count on it. Hua Yi pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang could not help but laugh. Swoosh. The four of them landed on the peak of the mountain, one after another. Qin Rushuang was naturally the first. Looking at the stairway in front of them, the four of them were filled with emotions. At this moment, other than the white-haired old man guarding the stairway, there were only the four of them at the peak of the mountain. Obviously, they were the first group to arrive here. As for the white-haired old man, he sat cross-legged beside the stairway as usual and did not seem to notice the arrival of Qin Feiyang and the other three. Peak Divine Skill, Peak Divine Weapon, 100,000 Soul Stones. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Fire Lotus giggled. Don't be so happy. After all, you can't cultivate even if I give you the soul stones. For you, the death fruit and the ghost wood are the most important. Qin Feiyang snickered. Fire Lotus scoffed. Can't I be happy for you guys? Haha. Qin Feiyang secretly laughed and turned to look at the white-haired old man. Hua Yi whispered. This old man's strength is terrifying. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and transmitted his voice. How much do you know about the Nine Heavens Palace? I don't know. Hua Yi shook his head. Bullshit. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. Since he knew the Heavenly Dragon Mountain range like the back of his hand, how could he not know about the Nine Heavens Palace? I'm telling the truth. Hua Yi looked at Qin Feiyang helplessly. Then, He looked at Qin Rushuang and smiled. Miss, it's still early. Why don't we discuss how to distribute the rewards? Qin Rushuang glanced at Hua Yi and frowned. This has nothing to do with you, right? How is it not related? If I didn't lead the way, would you have come here so easily? Although I didn't contribute much along the way, I still deserve a share. Hua Yi was unhappy. Qin Rushuang rolled her eyes and said, Fine, I'll give you 10,000 soul stones. 10,000? That's too little. Hua Yi chuckled. Big brother Hua Yi, that's quite a lot. Although you led the way into the hinterland, my brother's contribution is the greatest. Fire Lotus said. That's right. If it wasn't for my little brother, you would have died a long time ago. There's something you don't know yet. Nie Yun's group and the beast horde were all ordered by Feng Yuan. Qin Rushuang transmitted her voice. What? Hua Yi raised his eyebrows and turned to Qin Feiyang. It's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. That damn old bastard. Hua Yi cursed and transmitted his voice. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Would telling you work? Can you resolve the beast horde? Fire Lotus asked. No. Hua Yi shook his head. That's not right. Feng Yuan is determined to get rid of us in this assessment. However, it would appear that my brother is superior. He was able to easily resolve these dangers. Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang with admiration and chuckled. He's really good. Hua Yi gave Qin Feiyang a thumbs up and frowned. But that Mu Tianyang, who is he? Why is he so powerful? I don't know him. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Come on. If you don't know him, why would you go and scheme against him? Hua Yi rolled his eyes and chuckled. But this time, I really have to thank him. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to get rid of those beast horde. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang, saying, You must be tired after rushing all the way here. Take a good rest. The two nodded and sat down cross-legged. They took out a divine crystal and began to absorb the energy in it to recuperate. Qin Feiyang glanced at Hua Yi and said, Brother Hua, let's talk. Talk about what? Hua Yi looked at him suspiciously. Who are you? Why do you want to get close to me? Of course, to show my sincerity, I will tell you my identity. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. I'm just an ordinary person. As for getting close to you, didn't I tell you earlier? I want you to help me pass the assessment. Hua Yi said. Brother Hua, that's boring. You know so much about the Sky Dragon Mountain Range, and you still need my help? Qin Feiyang frowned. Hua Yi said helplessly, I'm telling the truth. Why don't you believe me? Fine. Pretend I didn't ask. But I sincerely hope that you don't have any ulterior motives. If you do, come at me. Don't hurt Fire Lotus and the others. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. You? Why is your heart so heavy? Hua Yi was speechless. There's nothing I can do about it. The world is so cruel. In order to survive, I have to be careful. Qin Feiyang said. Hua Yi shook his head and laughed and said, Don't worry, I won't hurt you. That's for the best. Qin Feiyang also smiled. At the same time, Nine Heavens Palace. In a certain palace, a middle-aged man sat by the tea table, quietly sipping tea. This person was Feng Wenhai. Bang! Suddenly, the door was kicked open. A red-haired old man walked in angrily. It was Feng Yuan. Feng Wenhai was startled, put down his teacup and asked suspiciously, Father, why are you back? Zhang Haoyin and the others have already passed the assessment. Is there a need to continue watching? Feng Yuan said gloomily and sat down opposite Feng Wenhai. Looking at the tea set on the table, his face was as gloomy as water. Bastard! Suddenly, he shouted angrily and sent the tea table flying. Feng Wenhai jumped in fright and hurriedly asked, Did our plan to frame Zhang Haoyin fail? The plan to frame him was very successful. Feng Yuan said, Then why are you doing this? Feng Wenhai was puzzled. Feng Yuan said in a deep voice, Although we succeeded in framing Zhang Haoyin, it also aroused the suspicion of the Great Elder. What? Why would he suspect us? Feng Wenhai's face changed. No, he hasn't suspected us yet. However, he is already suspecting that there is someone behind Nie Yun's group and the Beast Tide. And he also ordered Shangguan Fenglan to investigate this matter. Feng Yuan said. Shangguan Fenglan. Feng Wenhai raised his eyebrows. Feng Yuan said, "This matter can't be underestimated. Go to Sky Dragon Mountain Range immediately and kill all the beasts and people who know about it." Kill them? But now, the assessment isn't over yet, Feng Wenhai said. Don't worry, everyone has already dispersed. The Great Elder also didn't pay attention to the situation in Sky Dragon Mountain Range, but just in case, you'd better disguise yourself. Feng Yuan said. Okay, I'll go right away. Feng Wenhai nodded, got up and left in a hurry. Trash. All of you are trash. The anger in Feng Yuan's heart was really difficult to calm down. In order to bribe Nie Yun and the others, he spent a lot of soul stones. But what did he get in the end? He got nothing. He still had to do it himself. It was simply a waste of soul stones. The most infuriating thing was that these soul stones all fell into Jiang Haoyin's hands in the end. Wasn't this too convenient for him? P.S. Today, 2 chapters. Chapter 1983. The night was as dark as ink. In the depths of Nine Heaven Palace, beside a small stream, there was a small courtyard. The stream flowed and was so clear that one could see the bottom. In the courtyard, there was a vegetable garden, an orchard, and an old small building. It looked like a small courtyard of an ordinary family. However, this seemingly ordinary place was actually a forbidden area of the Nine Heavens Palace. In the hall of the small building, at this moment, a black-haired old man was sitting on an old yellow chair. In front of the old man stood a young and beautiful woman in purple. First Elder, didn't you ask me to investigate the beast tide? Why did you call me here in private? The woman in purple looked at the black-haired old man suspiciously. Fenglan, don't you understand? I was in the meeting hall at that time. I deliberately said it for others to hear. The black-haired old man laughed hoarsely. His face was very kind. The woman in purple was stunned and puzzled. First Elder, what are you playing at? Think about it. If there is really someone behind this beast tide, then who has the ability to do so? The black-haired old man laughed. The woman in purple thought for a moment and said, there should be many people in the northern region who have the ability to organize a beast tide. There are indeed many people in the northern region who can organize such a beast tide. But we are in the Sky Dragon Mountain Range now. The Sky Dragon Mountain Range is not only the headquarters of the beasts in the northern region, but also the territory of Nine Heaven Palace. In my opinion, no one has the guts to organize a beast tide under our noses. The strangest thing is that this beast tide just happened to appear during the assessment. You also know that when Nine Heaven Palace recruits disciples, we only announce the location of the assessment on the day of the assessment. So if it was an outsider, they wouldn't have the time to organize a beast tide. The black-haired old man laughed. The purple-clothed woman was stunned. She asked in surprise, what do you mean? That's right. This is the doing of someone in Nine Heaven Palace. The black-haired old man laughed. Who is it? Why would he do this? The woman in purple was angry. The target of the beast tide is obviously Jiang Haoyin. Think about it. Who in Nine Heaven Palace has a grudge with Jiang Haoyin? The black-haired old man said. Grudges? The purple-clothed woman frowned. Suddenly, her eyes lit up as she looked at the black-haired old man. Feng Yuan?
Yes.
We've never even heard of the name Jiang Haoyin before, let alone enmity. So there's only Feng Yuan. The black-haired old man smiled. He is the hall master of the Nine Heavens Palace's resource hall. Is there a need to make things difficult for a junior like this? Is it to wash away Feng Zijuan's shame? The purple-clothed woman raised her eyebrows. It is precisely because he is the hall master of our Nine Heavens Palace's resource hall that he cannot tolerate anyone humiliating his descendant. After all, this is indirectly slapping him in the face. The black-haired old man said. The purple-robed woman asked suspiciously, could it be that the matter of Jiang Haoyin slandering the Nine Heavens Palace was also arranged by him? This old man is still unable to come to a conclusion on this matter. This old man asked you to come here because I want you to investigate this matter thoroughly, the black-haired old man said. The purple-clothed woman frowned and said, didn't you already send someone to investigate? The black-haired old man smiled and said, this old man doesn't trust anyone else. especially the people of the law enforcement hall. Great Elder, I don't like what you said. What do you mean, especially the people of the law enforcement hall? So in your eyes, the people of the law enforcement hall are all Feng Yuan's minions? Then why do you still need me as the hall master? The purple-clothed woman said unhappily. Feng Yuan, you are the hall master of the law enforcement hall. I think you should know the situation of the law enforcement hall better than this old man. Perhaps the appearance of this Jiang Haoyan is an opportunity given to you by the heavens. The black-haired old man smiled. The purple-clothed woman fell silent. The black-haired old man did not say anything more and smiled. Let's take a look at the situation of the Sky Dragon mountain range first. If this old man is right, those beasts will definitely be killed. After saying that, the black-haired old man waved his hand, and an image quickly appeared in the void in front of them. In the image, Mu Tianyang had already left. The four divine beasts were hiding in a nest. Their bodies were covered in wounds, and their eyes were filled with fear. Obviously, they had escaped from Mu Tianyang's hands. Countless ferocious beasts had gathered in the surroundings. Their ferocious eyes were filled with fear that could not be removed. I really didn't expect that human to be so terrifying. This time we have really taken a big tumble. The golden eagle said with lingering fear. Yeah, that blood blade must be a legendary divine weapon. Speaking of which, it's all that old thing's fault for not making things clear and causing us to lose so many of our brothers. We must find him and settle this score. The three beasts said angrily. No need. I took the initiative to find you. But at this moment, a cold laugh sounded in the sky. The four beasts looked up and saw a black-clothed man in a cloak descending in the sky. Who are you? The golden eagle shouted. The person who wants your lives. The black-clothed man waved his hand and divine power poured down like a waterfall. Boom! With a loud sound, the four beast emperors and the surrounding beasts were instantly turned into ashes. Not a single one was left. Immediately after, the black-clothed man didn't stop and activated a teleportation altar to leave. In the wooden building, the black-haired old man looked at the purple-clothed woman and smiled. Feng Yuan, did you see that? Everything is within this old man's expectations. You really can predict things like a god. The purple-clothed woman retracted her gaze and looked at the black-haired old man. It should be said to be luring the snake out of its hole. This old man deliberately said those words in the conference hall to lure them out. After all, they were also a little scared, so killing them to silence them was inevitable. The black-haired old man smiled. Since this is a trap set by you, why didn't you wait for the rabbit to come out and catch him on the spot? The purple-clothed woman frowned. As the Grand Elder of the Nine Heavens Palace, this old man first considers the big picture. The black-haired old man said, just because of the big picture, you let them do whatever they want? The purple-clothed woman said angrily, as a palace master, how can you say such ignorant words? Some people must be destroyed step by step, otherwise it will cause internal strife. The black-haired old man's tone was somewhat angry. The purple-clothed woman raised her eyebrows and said, then in your opinion, who was that person just now? Appearance and voice can be changed, but divine power can never be changed. Do you still need to ask this old man who he is? The black-haired old man said. The purple-clothed woman couldn't help but clench her fists. She lowered her head and pondered for a moment before saying, you just said that Jiang Haoyan's appearance is a chance given to me by the heavens? And the black-haired old man nodded. Do we really have to do this? The purple-clothed woman frowned. If we don't do this, I'm afraid that your position as the palace master of the law enforcement hall will be taken away sooner or later. The black-haired old man said, but does a mere Jiang Haoyan have the ability to fight with them? Even if he has the ability, aren't we just using him and harming him by doing this? The purple-clothed woman said, if he really is a talent, he will only become stronger in the face of this kind of pressure. If he isn't, then it doesn't matter if he dies. The black-haired old man chuckled. The purple-clothed woman said helplessly, forgive me for being blunt, but you're really ruthless. The black-haired old man laughed and asked, is there still no news of the vice palace master's whereabouts? No. The purple-clothed woman shook her head. As the number one figure of the Nine-Heaven Palace, he's always so willful and disappears whenever he wants. What a headache. The black-haired old man rubbed his forehead and said unhappily, "There's nothing we can do about it. The Vice Palace Master's personality is like this." The purple-clothed woman smiled bitterly. "No matter what, we have to find him as soon as possible. We have to keep an eye on him in the future. How can he be like this all the time?" The black-haired old man said angrily, "Okay." The purple-clothed woman nodded and said, "Then how should we deal with Jiang Haoyan? After all, everyone knows that he's slandering our Nine-Heaven Palace. Before we find out the truth, we have to do something. It'll be hard to convince everyone." "You can do as you see fit," the black-haired old man said. The purple-clothed woman's face darkened, and she said angrily, "You're just like the Vice Palace Master. You only know how to leave everything to others. This is called the capable ones do more work." The black-haired old man laughed. The purple-clothed woman rolled her eyes and then turned around and walked out of the wooden building. She stood in the courtyard and looked at the night sky. Jiang Haoyan. After muttering a few words, the purple-clothed woman disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1984. At the top of the mountain, not far from the stairway, Qin Feiyang and Hua Yi were also sitting cross-legged on the ground, resting with their eyes closed. Time passed quietly. About 2 hours passed. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of breaking air, 2 men and a woman landed on the top of the mountain. It was Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, and Guo Sueki. As soon as he saw Qin Feiyang, Mu Tianyang's face was filled with anger. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes and said with a bright smile, "Oh, good brother, you're finally here." Hearing the words good brother, the veins on Mu Tianyang's forehead suddenly jumped. Originally, first place should have been his. But he didn't expect to be schemed against by this bastard. Although the beast tide and the 4 beast emperors didn't cause any actual harm to him, he really couldn't swallow this anger. "Don't be angry. We're all brothers. What's there to be calculative about? How about this? We'll split the rewards equally," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "I don't need your pity." Mu Tianyang snorted coldly, holding back the anger in his heart. He raised his head and looked at the stairway, then his gaze fell on the white-haired old man. His pupils constricted slightly. He turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and transmitted his voice. "Do you know what Dong Zhengyang told me and the demon ancestor?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback and asked curiously, "Tell me." Mu Tianyang secretly said, "He told us not to be calculative with you and to forget the previous grudges." "That's not right." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "What's wrong?" Mu Tianyang raised his eyebrows. "He should have said that I'm not calculative with you, not that you're not calculative with me." Qin Feiyang secretly said, "Is there a difference?" Mu Tianyang was suspicious. "Of course there is. He told you not to be calculative with me, which is equivalent to saying that it was all my fault in the past. But whose fault was it in the past?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "I don't want to argue with you about these boring things. Now, let me ask you, do you want to cooperate?" Mu Tianyang thought to himself. Cooperation? Qin Feiyang was stunned. "You have also seen how terrifying this ancient world is. With our current strength, it will be very difficult for us to survive. But if we join forces, we can definitely make a name for ourselves in the northern region." Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice. "I'm sorry, but that's not where my ambition lies," Qin Feiyang said. "I know that you came to the ancient world to look for Qin Batian, but the process of searching will be very difficult. Can you handle it alone?" Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang said, "From Iron Ox Town to today, haven't I been alone?" "All right, as you wish, but I'll say the ugly words first. If you don't cooperate, I will think of ways to get rid of you." Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice, with a piercing chill in his words. "Even if I cooperate with you, you will still get rid of me. What's the difference?" "Bring it on. I'll take it all." Qin Feiyang sneered. "Haha." Mu Tianyang laughed secretly and didn't speak again. He also sat at the side and closed his eyes to cultivate. Mu Qing stayed by Mu Tianyang's side. As for Guo Sueki, She stared at Qin Feiyang, wishing she could kill him immediately. Time flew by. The sky gradually turned white. At this moment, someone finally arrived. Then, there were more people who came through the air and landed on the mountain peak. But there was no exception. Everyone was in an extremely sorry state. Some were covered in blood. Some were missing arms and legs. Some were so weak that they needed the support of their companions. However, those who were able to arrive here within the stipulated time were definitely not ordinary people. Their cultivations were basically all at the perfection war god realm. There were also a few perfect war god. Zhang Haoyin, he actually arrived before us? What's going on? Isn't he only at the level of a low-level war god? Who is that purple-clothed youth? When the people who arrived saw Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang's group, their faces were filled with disbelief. At the same time, they were also extremely disappointed. There was only one reward, first come, first served. Now that Qin Feiyang's group had arrived before them, the reward had nothing to do with them. The only thing worth celebrating was that they survived. Gradually, 200 to 300 people gathered on the mountain peak. The sun had also risen and shone on the earth. It's almost time, but only these few people have made it to the Nine Heavens Palace alive. This test is truly extraordinarily cruel. Fire Lotus had already woken up. She looked at the sun in the sky and sighed. This is the Sky Dragon mountain range. In the past assessments, at least 700 people passed. At most, there were 2,000 to 3,000 people. And this time, there are only 200 to 300 people. However, not everyone will die in the Sky Dragon mountain range, Hui said. What do you mean? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Hui said, do you still remember the token that the old man gave us when we registered? Fire Lotus nodded. Once the assessment ends, this token will automatically shatter and turn into a force that will send those who did not pass the assessment out of the Sky Dragon mountain range. So, as long as they don't try to be brave and hide somewhere, they can keep their lives. Hui laughed. So that's how it is. Fire Lotus nodded in realization and asked, then our tokens will also shatter? Yes. Hui took out the black token and whispered, it should be shattering soon. I wonder if anyone else is coming? Qin Rushuang scanned the crowd and said, Feiyang, I don't seem to see Gao Xiaowei. Gao Xiaowei? Qin Feiyang was stunned and scanned the crowd. In the past 2 days, because of the entanglement with Nie Yun and the others, and meeting Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing, he had completely forgotten about this woman. In the crowd, he really did not find Gao Xiaowei. Gao Xiaowei is just a beginner martial immortal. Although the young master asked someone to take care of her, I'm afraid she's not going to make it. Qin Rushuang said to herself, life and death is up to fate. Qin Feiyang sighed. He had done enough for Gao Xiaowei and Gao Xiaolong, this pair of brother and sister. He had a clear conscience. As for what will happen in the future, let nature take its course. Crack. Suddenly, the token in Hua Yi's hand shattered into pieces with a crisp sound. This also meant that the time was up. Qin Feiyang and the others took out their tokens, which were also shattered. But at this moment, 6 figures rushed over and landed on the mountain peak. Qin Feiyang looked over and a smile crept onto his face. Of the 6 people, 5 were men and only 1 was a woman. The 5 men were all at the perfect war god realm, and their bodies were all riddled with wounds. The woman was only a beginner martial immortal. It was Gao Xiaowei. Fire Lotus laughed. To be able to take care of Gao Xiaowei and pass the test, it seems like the 5 of them are not simple. If they were simple, the young master wouldn't have asked them to take care of Gao Xiaowei. Qin Feiyang smiled. At the same time, Gao Xiaowei bent over and placed her hands on her knees. She stood behind the 5 men, panting like a cow, but her face was filled with joy. She finally made it. From now on, she will be a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. I wonder if Big Brother Jiang passed the test? She took a deep breath and looked up at the crowd. Soon, she saw Qin Feiyang and the others in the crowd. He also passed? It makes sense. Big Brother Jiang is so strong. It would be strange if he didn't pass. But she did not greet Qin Feiyang and the others because she was afraid of attracting attention. Little sister Xiaowei, are you happy? After the 5 men calmed down, they took the healing pills and turned to Gao Xiaowei with a smile. Happy? I never thought that I would become a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. Thank you so much. I've been a burden to you all the way here. Otherwise, you would have come here long ago. Gao Xiaowei looked at the 5 men with an apologetic face. It's okay. After all, we're all on the same side. What I'm curious about is, who was the first to come here? The 5 men scanned the crowd, their eyes filled with suspicion. The reward for the first place was what everyone wanted, but there was only one spot. Who would be the lucky one? Gao Xiaowei glanced at Qin Feiyang again. Could it be this man? Boom. Suddenly, a terrifying aura descended. On the stairway to heaven, a middle-aged man in black with a cold face walked down step by step. Feng Wenhai. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. In order to get rid of him, Feng Yuan and Feng Wenhai, this pair of father and son, could be said to have schemed. Sooner or later, he would find these two to get back at him. 10 breaths later, Feng Wenhai stopped at a third of the way up the staircase. He stood on the stairs and looked down at the people on the mountain peak. A moment later, a smile appeared on his face as he nodded. Not bad. Even in the Sky Dragon Mountain range, there are 312 people who passed the test. I believe that after this training, each of you will have limitless achievements in the future. Hearing these words of praise, everyone beamed with joy. But don't be too proud, because in our Nine Heavens Palace, the only thing we don't lack is geniuses. Only by working hard and fighting can you become a person above others. Feng Wenhai changed the topic and said, "We will remember elders' teachings." Everyone bowed and replied, "Then, I now announce that everyone here is officially a member of the Nine Heavens Palace." Feng Wenhai shouted, "Haha, I'm a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. No one will dare to look down on me in the future. My efforts in the past 2 days were worth it." The peak was suddenly in an uproar. Some people were even crying tears of joy. Gao Xiaowei was one of them. Feng Wenhai did not disturb them, because this kind of scene could be seen every year. Although he was not a good person, he could understand everyone's feelings at this moment. A moment later, Feng Wenhai raised his hands and said with a smile, "Everyone, please be quiet." The peak instantly fell into a dead silence. Feng Wenhai said, "Next, I will announce the first place of this test." Hearing this, everyone held their breaths and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Feng Wenhai looked around and suddenly pointed at Qin Rushuang in the crowd and said with a smile, "The first place of this test is her, Jiang Rushuang." "What? It's her. I heard that this woman is Jiang Haoyan's sister. How did she do it? A beginner divine warrior can be the first to come to the Nine Heavens Palace? Of course, she must have Jiang Haoyan's help. Even with Jiang Haoyan's help, it's impossible. After all, Jiang Haoyan is only a beginner divine warrior." Everyone discussed and their faces were filled with disbelief. Chapter 1985. They could accept it if it was a perfection war god getting first place. But it was hard to accept that it was just a beginner war god. Although it's a bit ridiculous, it's the truth. Even the great elder of the Nine Heaven Palace saw it with his own eyes. Feng Wenhai smiled. "I didn't expect it to be them even in my dreams." Everyone sighed endlessly, feeling sour in their hearts. What right did a beginner war god have to get this reward? To put it bluntly, they were jealous and felt it was unfair. Qin Feiyang and the others didn't care about these people's gazes. They just wanted to get the reward as soon as possible. But, suddenly, Feng Wenhai's tone changed abruptly. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and suspiciously looked at Feng Wenhai. The others also looked at Feng Wenhai and waited for him to continue. Because during the exam, the Nine Heaven Palace found out about Jiang Haoyan and the others' evil deeds. So Qin Rushuang's reward is cancelled. Feng Wenhai shouted and looked at Qin Feiyang and the others with a hint of mockery in his eyes. "What? Cancelled?" Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing were also shocked. As for Qin Feiyang and the others, their faces suddenly sank. And not only is the reward cancelled, but the higher-ups also ordered us to kill Jiang Haoyan, Jiang Rushuang, Jiang Fire Lotus, and Huai on the spot. Feng Wenhai shouted again, and the murderous intent in his eyes was undisguised. "What? Kill on the spot? What is going on?" Evil deeds? What kind of evil deeds made the Nine-Heaven Palace want to kill them? Everyone was shocked to the extreme. The expressions of Qin Feiyang and the other three also turned dull. Kill on the spot? What was going on? Although they had humiliated Feng Zijuan and offended Feng Yuan and Feng Wenhai, they had never even seen the higher-ups of the Nine-Heaven Palace. Why would they give such an order? Stunned, the four of them were completely stupefied. Mu Tianyang was standing beside Qin Feiyang. He glanced at Qin Feiyang with schadenfreude before raising his head to look at Sun Dahai. He asked suspiciously, Elder, what did they do wrong? They're slandering our Nine Heavens Palace behind our backs, ruining our reputation. How can we tolerate such heinous crimes? Feng Wenhai shouted angrily. Slandering Nine Heaven Palace? Mu Tianyang was stunned. Mu Qing glanced at Qin Feiyang and said, Ancestor, this isn't something Qin Feiyang would do, right? He has no enmity with Nine Heavens Palace. How could he do such a thing? There must be something fishy going on here. Mu Tianyang thought to himself. I see. This kind of trash wants to enter Nine Heavens Palace? What a delusion. He deserves to die. However, the others were not familiar with Qin Feiyang's character. They did not have any doubts and believed it on the spot. They all stared at Qin Feiyang and the other three with righteous indignation. Hui glanced at the gazes of the people around him and said, Brother Jiang, what's going on? How would I know? Qin Feiyang was furious. This was completely out of his expectations. In fact, he had thought that Feng Wenhai would make things difficult for him after the assessment. However, he did not expect that Feng Wenhai would be so vicious as to directly target their lives. Slandering us. An angry shout suddenly rang out. It was Qin Rushuang. She stared at Feng Wenhai with a gloomy expression. Slandering us? I didn't wrongly accuse you in this matter. That's because it was personally investigated by the First Elder, Feng Wenhai said coldly, but his eyes were full of sneers. Let's see how you can jump around now. We didn't do it at all. Ask the Great Elder to come out. I want to confront him face to face. Qin Rushuang said angrily. How dare you? Who is the Great Elder? Is he someone a nobody like you can see? Feng Wenhai shouted. Even if he's a big shot, he can't be unreasonable and slander us. Qin Rushuang shouted. She was completely furious. It was not easy to get first place and the reward was in their hands. However, they were suddenly accused of such a groundless crime. They even wanted to kill them? This was simply unreasonable. You're rebelling. You actually dared to scold the First Elder in front of so many people. You're really hopeless. Feng Wenhai was furious and shouted angrily. You! Qin Rushuang was about to speak again. Calm down. Qin Feiyang stopped her and looked up at Feng Wenhai. He said indifferently, Elder Feng, I don't want to say much. I only want to give you a word of advice. God is watching what people do. Those despicable people will suffer retribution sooner or later. Let's go. With that, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and turned to leave. Feng Wenhai, you've gone too far this time. Wei looked at Feng Wenhai and shook his head in disappointment. He also turned to leave. Just you wait. We won't let this go so easily. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus also sneered and turned to chase after Qin Feiyang. They still dare to be so arrogant? Feng Wenhai was a little stunned. These few people were really fearless. In terms of courage, he was sincerely impressed. This was because there was no one in the world who dared to be so arrogant in front of him in Empyrean Palace. However, they wanted to leave just like that? It was impossible. However, just as he was about to attack, the 300 people on the mountain peak suddenly swarmed forward and surrounded Qin Feiyang and the other three. Gao Shuhui hesitated for a moment and also went forward to act. As for Mu Tianyang and the other two, they had no intention of interfering. They were all gloating. The white-haired old man sitting beside the stairway was even calmer. He did not even open his eyes. Stop right there. Didn't you hear what Elder Feng said? The higher-ups gave the order to kill you on the spot. You want to leave just like that? Not a chance. You dare to slander Empyrean Palace? That means you are going against us disciples of Empyrean Palace. Today, as long as we leave, you won't be able to leave. The 300-plus people surrounded Qin Feiyang and the other three, all of them glaring at them like tigers watching their prey. They did not hide their murderous intent. Get lost. Qin Feiyang's patience was reaching its limit. His gaze was like a sharp blade that emitted a bone-piercing aura. The few young men and women standing at the front were all perfect war gods. However, when they saw Qin Feiyang's gaze, they could not help but feel a sense of fear. Brother, kill them, Fire Lotus said. Qin Rushuang also looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I allow you to start a massacre. The two did not transmit their voices. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Hearing Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang's words, the surrounding people could not help but take a step back. Although Qin Feiyang's cultivation was only at the initial war god realm, since he was the first to arrive at Empyrean Palace, he must have some terrifying trump card. At the same time, Hua Yi's heart skipped a beat. He turned his head and looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two's expressions. He immediately knew that something was wrong. After interacting with these three for so many days, this was the first time he had seen such terrifying gazes. If this continued, the three of them would probably really start a massacre here. Qin Feiyang scanned the surrounding crowd. Seeing that these people did not give way, a monstrous murderous intent exploded and he shouted, I'll say it one last time, get lost. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's body was surrounded by a murderous aura like a blood-red flame. This terrifying murderous aura was something that no one at the scene had ever felt before. Even Feng Wenhai could not help but narrow his eyes and feel a chill in his heart. What kind of person was this? Why was there such a terrifying murderous aura hiding in his body? Compared to before, it was as if he was a completely different person. It was as if a god of death had returned. Guosweki and Gao Xiaowei stared at Qin Feiyang with pale faces. This was because in their impression, Qin Feiyang had always been a gentle and amiable person. Therefore, at this moment, when they saw Qin Feiyang revealing such a side, they were not used to it, but more than that, they were scared. Not only was this murderous aura terrifying to an unprecedented degree, it was also cold-blooded and merciless. They could even smell the scent of blood, as if a demon had descended. Even the white-haired old man was startled. The white-haired old man slowly opened his eyes and stared at Qin Feiyang, who was standing among the crowd, with a flicker in his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart, but soon, he closed his eyes again, and his expression calmed down. Murderous aura enveloped the entire mountain peak. The surrounding people began to slowly back away. Mu Qing glanced at the more than 300 people and sneered inwardly, if it was me, I would have fled long ago. What a bunch of idiots. Idiots? Guosweki was stunned and said telepathically, Mu Qing, is Qin Feiyang that strong? Strong? The word strong is not enough to describe how terrifying he is. If we really provoke him, let alone these trash, the entire Empyrean Palace will suffer, or even destroy them. Mu Qing thought. What? Guosweki's eyes trembled. Mu Qing is not joking. If this guy goes crazy, even I will be slaughtered, especially his biggest trump card. Once he uses it, the entire northern region will suffer. Mu Tianyang pondered for a while and said, it might be more appropriate to describe it as a calamity. Guosweki's heart was in turmoil. She did not expect this man to be so terrifying. If that was the case, was there any hope for her revenge? Although he is terrifying, there are many ways to take revenge. It just depends on whether you have the heart to do it. Mu Tianyang saw through Guosweki's thoughts and said with a smile, the enmity of exterminating my clan is irreconcilable. I can't wait to kill him now. Guosweki thought. Mu Tianyang's eyes flashed and said, but he is your fiancé after all. So what if he is my fiancé? Guosweki snorted coldly. Hearing this, Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing looked at each other and smiled. Mu Tianyang said telepathically, then let me remind you that your fiancé cares a lot about the people around him. The people around him. Guosweki was stunned and shifted her gaze to Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus. Soon, she understood and muttered, Qin Feiyang, I will definitely make you regret it. Chapter 1986. At the top of the mountain, the murderous aura spread in all directions, as if it was dyed with blood. Feng Wenhai was not in a hurry to make a move. His eyes were full of sneers. However, even if he made a move, he probably wouldn't be able to do it. Because at the top of the sky stairway, a woman in purple had already arrived. This person was Shangguan Fenglan, but she didn't say a word and just watched silently. In addition to the clouds and mist, everyone's attention was now on Qin Feiyang, so they didn't notice her. Sigh. After a long time, Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, turned his head to look at Feng Wenhai, and sighed. I wanted to keep a low profile, but you guys are so aggressive. It seems that I am not born to keep a low profile. The corner of Feng Wenhai's mouth twitched. He actually pretended? You will regret it immediately. Qin Feiyang spoke again. Regret? Feng Wenhai was speechless. Was there really nothing wrong with this little bastard's head? Although he had the strength to instantly kill a perfect war god, he was a dignified elder of law enforcement. How could Nie Yun and the others compare to him? The corner of Feng Wenhai's mouth curled up into a mocking smile, a naked provocation. Get ready to run for your life. But Mu Tianyang couldn't calm down and transmitted his voice. Mu Qing's face was also extremely heavy. Guosweki looked at the two of them and couldn't help but feel nervous. Even Feng Wenhai didn't care. What kind of tricks did this man have? Boom. All of a sudden, a blood-red domain condensed around Qin Feiyang. A murderous aura that was even more terrifying than before flooded in all directions like a tide. In an instant, the 300 people surrounding Qin Feiyang and the others all collapsed to the ground. Their faces were filled with despair and fear. Slaughter domain. Upon seeing Qin Feiyang activate the slaughter domain, Mu Tianyang's gaze suddenly trembled and shouted, Go! Mu Qing also dragged Guosweki and fled with Mu Tianyang. The others didn't know, but they had seen the slaughter domain with their own eyes. They also knew how terrifying the slaughter domain was. What is this thing? Why am I panicking? Feng Wenhai was also staring at Qin Feiyang in shock. The contempt he had for Qin Feiyang earlier instantly vanished without a trace. The white-haired old man opened his eyes again. His eyes were filled with astonishment. After living for so many years, this kind of killing intent was simply unheard of. He then looked at Mu Tianyang and the other two. His old eyes flashed as he said, Shangguan Fenglan, what else do you want to see? Shangguan Fenglan. Feng Wenhai's eyes trembled as he scanned the surroundings. He turned to look at the top of the stairway, and his expression changed drastically. He bowed and said, Greetings, Temple Master. Shangguan Fenglan was also extremely shocked at this moment. Although he didn't know what Qin Feiyang's domain was, he didn't know. However, even she felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Whoosh! Hearing the white-haired old man and Feng Wenhai's voices, she let out a long sigh and walked down step by step. Who is she? He looks about the same age as us. Why is Feng Wenhai so respectful? Temple Master? Which Temple Master is she? The more than 300 disciples raised their heads and looked at Shangguan Fenglan suspiciously. However, the panic in their hearts did not dissipate, because Qin Feiyang's killing domain was still there. Qin Feiyang and the other three were also looking at Shangguan Fenglan with a trace of suspicion between their brows. After a while, Shangguan Fenglan walked down and stopped beside Feng Wenhai. Feng Wenhai looked at Shangguan Fenglan respectfully and said, Temple Master, when did you come? Shangguan Fenglan said indifferently, When you came, I was already here. Feng Wenhai's heart trembled. Shangguan Fenglan said, Feng Wenhai, I want to ask you, when did we say we were going to kill Zhang Haoyan on the spot? This, Feng Wenhai was slightly stunned and said suspiciously, Isn't the evidence conclusive? The evidence is conclusive, Shangguan Fenglan murmured, looking down at Qin Feiyang. An inexplicable light flashed in her eyes, and she said indifferently, Although it is true, we did not say we were going to kill him. Temple Master, what do you mean? Shouldn't they be killed for slandering Jotian Palace? Feng Wenhai said, They should be killed. However, the heavens are virtuous, and they are young and ignorant, which is why they did such stupid things. We might as well give them another chance. Shangguan Fenglan said indifferently. What? Feng Wenhai was stunned. She was going to let these people go? Brother Jiang, what do you mean? Hua Yi was also stunned. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Shangguan Fenglan looked at the four and said, Zhang Haoyin, Zhang Rushuang, Zhang Fire Lotus, Hua Yi, do you admit your mistakes? What did we do wrong? Someone is framing me. Qin Rushuang said. Shangguan Fenglan said, then tell me, who framed you? Do you have evidence? We. Qin Rushuang was speechless. There was no doubt that Feng Wenhai and the others were behind this. However, they really could not produce any evidence. What a glib tongue. Sophistry. Temple Master, the first elder sent someone to investigate this matter, and you saw it with your own eyes. It can't be fake. Don't be fooled by them. Feng Wenhai bowed. You don't need to remind me. I know what to do. Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand and looked at the four people. Do you have evidence? Qin Rushuang shook her head. Since you don't have evidence, what are you still arguing about? If you admit your mistakes, you must change. I'm giving you a chance. Don't waste it. Shangguan Fenglan snorted coldly. Hearing this, Qin Rushuang suddenly became angry. Hui saw that the situation was not good and said telepathically, My lady, can you stop talking? Can't you see that this woman is saving us? I know she's helping us, but I can't admit it, Qin Rushuang said to herself. Huayi's heart was full of helplessness. He turned his head and glanced at Qin Feiyang, saying, Brother Jiang, say something. Qin Feiyang looked at Qin Rushuang, then at Huayi, and then at Shangguan Fenglan. His eyes flickered. Shangguan Fenglan also looked at Qin Feiyang without any change in her expression. Brother Jiang, I know you have a temper, but if we really fall out with Jotian Palace, it won't do us any good. You have to think twice. Huayi transmitted his voice anxiously. Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Fenglan looked at each other like this. The more than 300 people did not dare to make a sound. After an unknown period of time, suddenly, the killing zone around Qin Feiyang dissipated. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing finally breathed a sigh of relief. Hui also let out a long breath. Qin Feiyang sighed deeply and said to Shangguan Fenglan, We know our mistake. Feiyang, Brother Jiang. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus were stunned and immediately cried out secretly. Knowing their mistake was equivalent to admitting it. Wasn't this deliberately giving Feng Wenhai a chance to deal with them? All right, don't say any more. I know what I'm doing. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Palace Master, did you hear that? He admitted it. Since he admitted it, he should be killed immediately as a warning to others. As expected, Feng Wenhai immediately began to make things difficult. Shangguan Fenglan ignored him and looked at Qin Feiyang. Since you're wrong, do you want to change it? Definitely. Qin Feiyang nodded. Very good. Then I'll give you a chance and allow you to enter Jotian Palace. However, rewards and punishments must be clear, or it will be difficult to convince the public. Your first place will be annulled and replaced by the second place. Naturally, you won't get the reward. Moreover, you, who should be inner disciples, will be demoted to outer disciples. Do you have any objections? Shangguan Fenglan asked. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Shangguan Fenglan said, All right, then it's settled. Palace Master, I have something to say. Feng Wenhai hurriedly said. Speak. Shangguan Fenglan said, I know you're kind, Palace Master, but nothing can be accomplished without rules. If we let them go after committing such a grave mistake, how will Jotian Palace stand in the future? Most importantly, if you do this, people will definitely say that you're deliberately protecting them. This will damage your reputation, Feng Wenhai said. Wrong. Shangguan Fenglan shook her head. What's wrong? Feng Wenhai was suspicious. Just as you said, even though they committed such a grave mistake, I was still willing to show them mercy and let them off. Doesn't this prove that my Nine Heavens Palace is a reasonable place? Therefore, by doing this, I'm adding flowers to brocade and giving Jotian Palace a better reputation. Everyone will definitely rely on and respect Jotian Palace in the future. After Shangguan Fenglan finished speaking, she looked at the 300 people and smiled. Do you think what I said makes sense? Palace Master is benevolent. Jotian Palace will definitely rise to a higher level in the future. Those people immediately shouted. Shangguan Fenglan nodded her head in satisfaction and turned to Feng Wenhai. She asked with a smile. Do you see that? Do you still think I'm wrong? I wouldn't dare. Feng Wenhai's pupils shrank, and he quickly shook his head. Since there are no objections, then hurry up and arrange it. I think these little guys can't wait to enter Jiutian Palace. Shangguan Fenglan swept her gaze across the crowd and smiled. Yes. Feng Wenhai respectfully replied. He looked gloomily at Qin Feiyang's group and shouted, Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, Guasweki, come forward. The three of them exchanged a glance and quickly walked to the heavenly stairway. Feng Wenhai took out a Chinkuan bag and said, apart from Qin Feiyang's group of 4, you were the first to come here. Their rankings are now invalid, so you're first. After saying that, he threw the Chinkuan bag to Mu Tianyang. Mu Tianyang hastily caught the Chinkuan bag and bowed. Thank you, Elder. Thank you, Palace Master. Mu Qing secretly said, Ancestor, quickly take a look. Is there really a divine art, a divine item, and a soul stone? Mu Tianyang examined it and nodded. There's no mistake. Haha. Mu Qing immediately laughed inwardly and glanced at Qin Feiyang. She transmitted her voice. Qin Feiyang. What's this called? By the way, man proposes but God disposes. You didn't expect this reward to fall into our hands in the end, did you? Qin Feiyang glanced at Mu Qing and then looked at Mu Tianyang, who also had a smug expression. He was extremely unhappy. How frustrating. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus were also indignant. They could choose not to take this reward, but if these two bastards took advantage of it, they would be unhappy. Chapter 1987. Feng Wenhai looked at Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang, his eyes twinkling. As an elder of the enforcement hall, he definitely had extraordinary eyesight. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that not only did the two have a grudge, but it had reached an irreconcilable stage. Perhaps this Mu Tianyang could be used well. However, Feng Wenhai glanced at Shangguan Fenglan. What did this woman mean today? After knowing her for so many years, he naturally knew Shangguan Fenglan very well. In the past, this woman never cared about these trivial matters. She rarely even appeared in public. But today, not only did she come out, but she also helped Jiang Haoyin and the others? Wait, could this woman be the backer of Jiang Haoyin and the others? Feng Wenhai's heart trembled. If that was the case, then this matter was not good. Although Shangguan Fenglan looked harmless, she was actually a woman with extremely terrifying means. This matter must be thoroughly investigated. Feng Wenhai's eyes flashed, looking down at the people on the mountain peak, and said, Next, please extract a drop of blood essence and drip it on the stairway to heaven. Mu Tianyang and the other two were the first to step forward. The others followed closely behind. Blood essence. Qin Feiyang muttered. Qindage, what about you? Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang worriedly and asked secretly. Qin Rushuang was also quite worried. Everything else could be hidden, except for blood essence. Because blood essence could not be changed. Once Qin Feiyang extracted the blood essence, then the matter of the purple gold dragon blood would naturally not be hidden from everyone. Qin Feiyang said, Gao Xiaolong has already mentioned this matter, and I have been thinking about it. After saving Gao Xiaolong in the Sky Dragon Mountain Range, he got the information about the fusion of blood essence from Gao Xiaolong. Fire Lotus asked, Then do you have a way now? Qin Feiyang said secretly, I can only think of one way, which is to cause chaos and fuse the blood essence into the stairway to heaven when no one is paying attention. Chaos. Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang looked at each other. This matter still depends on you guys. Qin Feiyang said. We? The two girls were stunned. Yes. Qin Feiyang secretly agreed. Looking at the backs of Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing, he transmitted his voice. These two people are a little too complacent now. Go and suppress their arrogance and drag them down with you. Drag him down? The two girls didn't understand. Qin Feiyang whispered a few words in their ears. Good idea. The two women looked at each other and smiled, then immediately walked towards Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing had just finished fusing the essence blood and were about to turn around and retreat to the side. However, just as they turned around, Qin Rushuang and the other two stepped forward, raised their arms, and slapped them hard in the face. Ugh! The peak of the mountain fell into deathly silence once more. Shangguan Fenglan and Feng Wenhai also stared at Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus in shock. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing were even more dumbfounded on the spot. Hui also looked at the two of them in shock. What was going on? What are you doing? After coming back to their senses, Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing were suddenly furious and shouted at the two of them. Qin Rushuang and Huai didn't say a word and directly slapped them in the face again. Bastard! Have you guys gone crazy? Don't think that I won't dare to hit you just because you are women. There was no doubt. The two consecutive slaps made Mu Tianyang and Huai's hair stand on end. Putting Mu Qing aside, let's talk about Mu Tianyang. As an emperor, being slapped in the face in public by a woman was a complete humiliation to him. Go ahead and hit us. Qin Rushuang approached Mu Tianyang with a frosty face. Mu Tianyang, on the other hand, was at a loss and kept retreating. You heartless bastard. You used to say that you liked me a lot, but when you saw us being bullied just now, you actually did nothing? I must be blind. How could I fall for a useless man like you? Qin Rushuang said angrily, looking wronged. I like you? Mu Tianyang was stunned. What was going on? Mu Qing also looked at Mu Tianyang in shock. Why are you looking at him? You are also a heartless bastard. Fire Lotus shouted. Me? Mu Qing pointed at her nose and asked in shock. If not you, who else could it be? Let me tell you, if you don't make it clear today, I will never forgive you. As Hualien spoke, tears flowed out of her eyes. Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing looked at each other. Was she having a stroke? Qin Feiyang was secretly refining the blood essence while sweeping his eyes over everyone. Basically, everyone's attention was on Qin Rushuang and the other three. However, he noticed that Shangguan Fenglan seemed to be looking at him intentionally or unintentionally. Could it be that this woman had already guessed that Qin Rushuang and Mu Qing's current actions were ordered by him? If that was the case, then there was definitely no way to integrate the essence blood into the stairway to heaven without anyone noticing. It seemed that he had to think of an idea. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up and he said to himself, Huai, kick me? What? Huai was stunned. He suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Otherwise, why would someone make such a request? Hurry up, Qin Feiyang urged. Are you sure? Huai was stunned. Yes, hurry up, Qin Feiyang said to himself. Okay. Hui shook his head helplessly. What a strange request. Then, he kicked Qin Feiyang's butt fiercely. Qin Feiyang immediately exclaimed as his entire body soared into the air and pounced on the stairway to heaven. The sudden scene caused everyone present to fall into a state of shock once again. Then, everyone's gaze shifted to Qin Feiyang. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus were also a little stunned. Qin Feiyang said to himself, Go and settle the score with Huori. Settle the score? Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus were stunned for a moment before they suddenly understood and said angrily, Huai, you bastard! Why did you bully my brother? Me? Huai looked at the angry Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus with an innocent face. This was what Zhang Haoyan asked for. How could he be blamed? Everyone's gaze fell on Huai again. One moment, he slapped others in public. The next moment, he kicked others away. What kind of people were these? At the same time, Qin Feiyang, who was lying on the stairway to heaven, used his body as a cover to take out his blood essence and fuse it with the stairway to heaven. And in order to cover the aura of the purple-gold dragon blood, he erupted with a burst of divine power. After fusing with the blood essence, he immediately jumped up and angrily rushed towards Huai. In this way, everyone naturally thought that it was because he was kicked by Huai that he released his divine power. What the hell is going on? Looking at Qin Feiyang's angry face, Huai was like a bullied little wife, his face full of grievance. Enough. A cold shout suddenly sounded. Qin Feiyang and the others froze and turned to look at Feng Wenhai. Feng Wenhai said angrily, Lord Temple Master is here, and you still dare to be so presumptuous. You are indeed a group of arrogant people. This is our private matter. What does it have to do with you? Elder Feng, do you even want to care about our food and drink? Qin Feiyang said indifferently. You, Feng Wenhai was so angry that he stomped his feet. This time, this temple master will not speak up for you, because as a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace, you can't be so unruly, and you can't offend the enforcement elder, Shangguan Fenglan said. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and said, Disciple knows his mistake and will definitely change in the future. And Shangguan Fenglan nodded. Feng Wenhai glared at Qin Feiyang and angrily shouted, Continue. Everyone's pupils shrank, and they once again rushed towards the sky stairway. Qin Feiyang also mixed in with the crowd and pretended to be calm. Temple Master, you've seen it with your own eyes. These people are naughty by nature. If we let them enter Nine Heavens Palace, who knows what kind of trouble they will cause. This subordinate still thinks that we should directly kill them to prevent future troubles. Feng Wenhai couldn't swallow this anger and looked at Shangguan Fenglan. Feng Wenhai, you are our Nine Heavens Palace's enforcement elder. How can you be so narrow-minded? Shangguan Fenglan said, I'm narrow-minded? Temple Master, your words are a little too much. I've been in the enforcement hall for so many years. What kind of people don't you know? If they are really good people, I definitely won't make things difficult for them. But they are all naughty people. Temple Master, forgive me for offending you. Are you so protective of them because of some other reason? Feng Wenhai asked cautiously. He was obviously trying to get information from Shangguan Fenglan. This temple master has never seen them. Shangguan Fenglan shook her head. Then what are you doing? Feng Wenhai frowned. Shangguan Fenglan said, This temple master has said before that I just couldn't bear it. Why? Do you suspect that they are my people? No, no, no. Feng Wenhai hurriedly waved his hand. How about this? In order to prove this temple master's innocence, you will be in charge of supervising them in the future. If they dare to act recklessly again, just do it, Shangguan Fenglan said. Okay. Feng Wenhai nodded. He couldn't ask for more. As long as they had nothing to do with Shangguan Fenglan, it would be easy for him to get rid of these people in the future with his status. After a while, more than 300 people all retreated to the side. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at the crowd and ordered, Feng Wenhai, bring them up. Yes. Feng Wenhai responded respectfully. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and shouted, Follow me. After saying that, he turned around and walked up the stairway to heaven. Everyone immediately followed and surged upwards in a grandiose manner. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and also stepped onto the stairway to heaven. This time, the stairway to heaven didn't react at all like last time. Mu Tianyang frowned and caught up with Qin Feiyang with Mu Qing and Guosweki. He said telepathically, Qin Feiyang, are you up to something again? No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Mu Tianyang said angrily, Do you dare say that Qin Rushuang and the others weren't ordered by you? He was really unable to calm down after being slapped twice for no reason. It's just 2 slaps. What's the big deal? I'm not even angry that you stole our reward. Qin Feiyang said lightly, You've gone too far. We also didn't expect Shangguan Fenglan to abolish your ranking and give the reward to us. If you want to blame someone, you should blame Shangguan Fenglan. Mu Tianyang said angrily, After saying so much, isn't the reward still in your hands? If you're so capable, why don't you return it to me now? Qin Feiyang sneered secretly. Return it to you? Then I've taken these 2 slaps for nothing? Mu Tianyang snorted coldly. Chapter 1988. You won't get slapped for nothing. Give me the reward and I'll let you slap me back. Qin Feiyang snickered secretly. There's no need for that. Mu Tianyang sneered. Mu Qing frowned and said, Ancestor, haven't you overlooked the most serious problem? What? Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Mu Qing said with a strange expression, putting aside the fact that we've been slapped twice. It seems like we've all become heartless men now. Mu Tianyang's face twitched. Those who did not know the truth might really think that was what Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus had said earlier. Wait, it's not that simple. Mu Tianyang seemed to have thought of something and his face was full of anger. What's wrong? Mu Qing was suspicious. This is a trap. The people who framed Qin Feiyang this time must be the Feng family. In other words, the Feng family wants to get rid of this guy no matter what. Originally, We could have cut ties with them. However, now that Qin Rushuang and the others have made such a scene, our relationship with Qin Feiyong has become ambiguous. The Feng family will definitely hate us as well. In short, now, we've been dragged down by him, Mu Qing said in a deep voice. That makes sense. That bastard. He's always thinking of plotting against us. Mu Qing glared at Qin Feiyong angrily and thought to herself, what if the Feng family really comes to make trouble for us? Mu Tianyang pondered for a while and rubbed his forehead. He sighed. It's probably useless to explain. We can only wait and see when the time comes. Sigh. Mu Qing could not help but sigh inwardly as well. He really could not be careless when interacting with that bastard Qin Feiyong. Otherwise, he would be plotted against. Wait. All of a sudden, Mu Qing stopped in his tracks and looked at Qin Feiyong's back with a bewildered expression. What's wrong? Mu Tianyang was suspicious. Mu Qing thought to herself, why didn't anyone discover Qin Feiyong's purple golden dragon blood before? I said you're stupid, but you still won't admit it. Do you still remember that Hua Yi kicked Qin Feiyong? He must have used that opportunity to secretly fuse his blood essence into the stairway to heaven. Mu Tianyang thought to himself. I see. On one hand, he dragged us into the water, and on the other, he successfully deceived us. What a good plan. Mu Qing stared at Qin Feiyong's back with cold eyes. Although he had obtained the reward for being first place, he was not happy at all. Mu Tianyang was the same. Mu Qing was so angry that she transmitted her voice ancestor. Why don't we directly expose his identity? If it was in the past, it would have been a good idea. But now, with the two women making a fuss and exposing his identity, I'm afraid we'll be in trouble. To be honest, I really regret it. I shouldn't have hesitated before the assessment. We were really one step behind. Mu Tianyang sighed. According to what you said, now we have to help him hide his identity? Mu Qing raised her eyebrows. That's right. What's the situation with Qin Batian in Empyrean Palace? We have to figure this out. If the rumors are true and he has a high status in Empyrean Palace, then we'll benefit from Qin Feiyong. But if it's the opposite of the rumors, then we'll naturally be implicated. Mu Tianyang suddenly became angry when he said this. Why did it feel like he and Qin Feiyong were grasshoppers on the same rope, and their lives were tied together? Heartless man, Qin Rushuang. How could he like Qin Baishan's daughter? What a headache. Below, Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Qin Feiyong and the others, walked down the sky stairway, stood in front of the white-haired old man and bowed. Master, if Qin Feiyong were here, he would definitely be shocked. This seemingly ordinary old man was actually Shangguan Fenglan's master. But the white-haired old man still did not open his eyes and asked, Is this your idea or the First Elder's? First Elder, Shangguan Fenglan said. The white-haired old man fell silent. Shangguan Fenglan waited for a moment, but the white-haired old man did not speak. So she took the initiative to ask, Master, do you think Zhang Haoyan has the ability? Yes. The white-haired old man nodded. Shangguan Fenglan was surprised that her master did not hesitate at all. It seemed that Zhang Haoyan was really a talent. I've retired and don't want to care about these things anymore. When you go back and see the First Elder, tell him to be careful not to draw fire. After the white-haired old man finished speaking, he fell silent. Draw fire? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. But the white-haired old man had no intention of explaining. Shangguan Fenglan smiled helplessly, bowed and said, I'll take my leave. After saying that, without waiting for the white-haired old man to respond, she turned around and walked up the stairway to heaven, because she knew that the white-haired old man would not respond to her. Also, tell him again that there's no need to look for the deputy palace lord's whereabouts, the white-haired old man suddenly said. Shangguan Fenglan was surprised, turned to look at the white-haired old man, and asked, Master, do you know where the deputy palace lord is? However, the white-haired old man did not speak again. Shangguan Fenglan smiled bitterly, turned around, and quickly disappeared into the clouds. At the same time, at the top of the stairway to heaven was an empty square. Qin Feiyong and a group of people gathered in the square, looking curiously in front of them. The square was about 1,000 feet wide. and there was an eye-catching altar in the center. This altar was identical in shape to the teleportation altar. However, it was several times larger than the teleportation altar, resembling a small mountain. Outside the square was an endless stretch of towering mountains. In the mountains, the vegetation was lush, clouds and mist lingered, and all kinds of auspicious beasts and birds flew between the mountains. There were snow-white cranes. There were colorful peacocks. There were flame-like firebirds. This place was simply like a fairyland. Moreover, many of them were towering trees. There were even some ancient trees that dozens of people could not wrap their arms around. The vines wrapped around the ancient trees were as thick as buckets, like horned dragons, full of a strong aura. These ancient trees would not grow without tens of thousands of years. In the jungle, there were many fierce beasts' auras, each of which was extremely terrifying. Some auras were comparable to Shangguan Fenglan. There were even auras stronger than Shangguan Fenglan. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the fierce beasts here were. In addition, the essence chi here was also extremely rich. Everyone felt as if they were in the middle of an ocean of essence chi. They did not need to absorb it, and it flowed into their bodies through the pores of their bodies. It could be said that cultivating here for a day was comparable to cultivating outside for several days. No wonder the people of the North region desperately wanted to enter the Nine Heavens Palace. Not only were there endless resources here, but the cultivation environment was also far better than the outside. How is the Nine Heavens Palace? A chuckle sounded from the back. Everyone turned their heads and saw Shangguan Fenglan standing at the back, looking at everyone with a smile. Greetings, Palace Master. Everyone bowed. When I first entered the Nine Heavens Palace, I was deeply shocked like all of you. Rich essence chi, rich resources, powerful fierce beasts. All of these were things that I had never even dreamed of before. At that time, I secretly swore that I would not waste such a good cultivation environment, and I must work hard. Finally, one day, I sat on the throne of the Law Enforcement Palace Master. I'm not saying this to show off anything, but to let you know to cherish this opportunity. Shangguan Fenglan smiled. We will remember the Palace Master's teachings. Everyone bowed in response, and their fighting spirit was high in their hearts. All right then, Fengwenhai, take care of them well. After Shangguan Fenglan finished speaking, she rode the wind and disappeared into the depths of the mountain. Elder Feng, what kind of place is this? Someone asked curiously. The Nine Heavens Palace is an island floating in the sky. Although it's just an island, it's very big. Most of you are perfection war gods. With your speed, it'll take you at least 2 days to fly to the end of the island. Feng Wenhai said. It's actually an island? Everyone was dumbfounded. The most ridiculous thing was that it would take them 2 days to fly to the end. How big is this place? Qin Feiyang and the others were also shocked. If a perfect stage battle god needed 2 days, wouldn't it take even longer for them, who had just become battle gods and initial stage battle gods? This place was several times bigger than the Great Qin Empire and the Forgotten Continent combined. You're already surprised? The real surprise is yet to come. You can slowly understand the specific situation. Now, I'll bring you to the cave. Follow me. Feng Wenhai rose into the air and flew towards the mountain. The others quickly followed. What's the use of this altar? After Qin Feiyang flew into the sky, he looked down at the altar in the middle of the square suspiciously. I heard that this altar can directly teleport you to the Eastern Tomb, Western Desert, and Southern Wasteland. Hui said in a low voice. What? Qin Feiyang was stunned and said in surprise, it can teleport you so far? It said that not only in the Northern Domain, but also in the Eastern Tomb, Western Desert, and Southern Wasteland. After all, the 4 domains are too far apart, and you have to pass through various dangerous forbidden areas. So, with these 4 altars, it'll be much more convenient no matter what you do. Hui said with a smile. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, in other words, the 4 domains often interact with each other. Normal people definitely don't. Even the disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace are not allowed to enter the Eastern Tomb, Western Desert, and Southern Wasteland without permission from the higher-ups. The same goes for the Eastern Tomb, Western Desert, and Southern Wasteland. So, only the leaders of the four domains often interact with each other, Hui said. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. We're here. Suddenly, Feng Wenhai's voice sounded. So fast? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. It seemed that only a few dozen breaths had passed. Looking up, he saw a towering mountain peak in front of him. Each mountain peak was at least 1,000 feet high and covered with verdant vegetation. At a glance, it was densely packed, but arranged very neatly. And on the cliff, there was a stone door at regular intervals. Some stone doors were closed. Some stone doors were wide open. And that was the cave. Chapter 1989. Where is Chengli? Just as everyone was curiously sizing up the cave, Feng Wenhai shouted loudly. Whoosh! Not long after, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a black-clothed brawny man teleported over and landed in front of Feng Wenhai. The black-clothed brawny man cupped his hands and smiled. Brother Feng? Feng Wenhai nodded and smiled, and shouted without turning his head. Outer sect disciples, step out. More than 200 people immediately stepped out. Qin Feiyang, Qin Rushuang, Fire Lotus, and Hua Yi were also among them. The one standing in front of you is called Chengli, an outer sect elder. From now on, he will be responsible for everything you do. You must respect him more than your parents. Feng Wenhai said, Greetings, Elder Cheng. Everyone bowed and saluted. Chengli nodded and looked at Feng Wenhai with a smile. Brother Feng, your words are a bit exaggerated. Finished. He then swept his gaze over Qin Feiyang and the others and said, I am a very casual person. As long as you don't cause trouble in the future and follow the rules, disciple will remember. Everyone bowed and replied. They thought to themselves that this elder looked quite easygoing, unlike Feng Wenhai, who was overbearing. Feng Wenhai glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other three, his eyes shining, and laughed. Brother Cheng, let's talk somewhere else. All right. Chengli nodded. The two of them walked to a distance and whispered to each other. Who knew what they were talking about? Hui sent a sound transmission. Brother Jiang, guess what this Feng Wenhai is talking about? It's definitely nothing good. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Hui was slightly startled and frowned. Why do I feel that you're not worried at all? Worried? There's no need for that. Anyway, if it's a blessing, it's not a disaster. If it's a disaster, it can't be avoided. Qin Feiyang secretly said. Hui was stunned. He shook his head and laughed. To be honest, I really admire your mentality. I also admire you. Qin Feiyang smiled indifferently. Me? Hui was at a loss. What was there to admire about him? Qin Feiyang did not speak again. There were some things that only needed to be clear in his heart. Although Hui appeared to be a coward, if one were to carefully observe him, they would discover that he was not afraid at all. In other words, the so-called cowardice was completely an act. Qin Feiyang, the Feng family definitely won't take this lying down. Also, Hua Yi isn't someone to be trifled with either. You have to be careful. Mu Tianyang's voice suddenly rang in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang cast a glance toward Mu Tianyang and said inwardly, if anything happens to me, isn't that what you want to see? You, good intentions really don't pay off. I'm just concerned about you. Even though we don't have a good relationship, we're both from Great Qin. Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice. You care about me? You should be more concerned about yourself. I'm guessing that Feng Wenhai will talk to you soon. Qin Feiyang snickered. You're really a bastard. Mu Tianyang cursed inwardly. This guy was indeed scheming against them. Qin Feiyang chuckled and transmitted his voice. Actually, you don't have to be so angry. It's your blessing to be tied to me. Blessing? Mu Tianyang's anger suddenly flared up and he said angrily, then shouldn't I thank you? No need to thank me. As long as you don't stab me in the back in the future. Qin Feiyang snickered inwardly. You're really shameless. Mu Tianyang glared fiercely at Qin Feiyang. At this time, Feng Wenhai and Chengli walked side by side. Inner disciples, follow me. Feng Wenhai walked over, and without saying anything, he turned around and headed deeper into the forest. Dozens of people immediately followed him. Qin Feiyang, don't play tricks in the future. If you really annoy me, I'll die with you. Mu Tianyang secretly snorted and quickly left with Mu Qing and Guosweki. Qin Feiyang looked up at Mu Tianyang's back and muttered secretly, "Are you willing to die with me? You guys come with me too." Chengli glanced at the crowd and said with a smile. He also turned and flew toward a giant peak below. The crowd quickly followed. There are a total of 10,000 sword peaks in our outer gate, which are the ones in front of you. And each sword peak has 1,000 cave residences. In other words, our outer gate can accommodate a total of 10 million people. Chengli explained as he flew. What? 10 million people? Everyone was shocked. Even Qin Feiyang was extremely shocked. 10 million? What kind of concept was that? Some small countries didn't have that many people in the whole country. The most important thing was, anyone who entered Jotian Palace must be a war god. And at the very least, a perfect war god. In other words, just an outer gate, there were 10 million war gods. This was unbelievable. If the outer gate was so terrifying, then what about the inner gate? They didn't even dare to think about it. Chengli smiled and said, of course, although there are 10 million cave residences, they have never been full. Someone asked curiously, then how many disciples do we have in the outer gate? Chengli said, around 8 million. 8 million. Everyone sucked in a breath of air. Even if there wasn't 10 million, 8 million was enough to shock everyone. Of these 8 million people, 99% of them are at the perfection or perfection war god level. The remaining 1% are all advanced stage war gods. As for initial stage and initial stage, Jotian Palace doesn't have any. However, you must not underestimate that 1%. They can rely on this cultivation to pass the exam and enter Jotian Palace. They are not ordinary people. Chengli smiled. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang and the others. Weren't they just a few exceptions? Hui grinned. Don't look at us like that, okay? We'll be shy. Shy? Everyone was speechless and rolled their eyes. While they were talking, Chengli brought a group of people and stopped in front of a sword peak in the north. There's only one person on this sword peak right now. You guys can stay here. As for the cave residences, they're all the same size. There's no difference. You guys can distribute them yourselves. After settling down, go to the number 1 sword peak to find me and receive your clothes and identity badge. Chengli turned around and looked at everyone, smiling. Yes. Everyone nodded respectfully. All right, you guys go ahead. After Chengli finished speaking, he flashed and disappeared without a trace. This is our cave residence. I never dreamed that I would actually be able to enter Jotian Palace. When I walk out in the future, who would dare to be impudent in front of me? Everyone looked at the sword peak. Some were filled with emotions, while others were in high spirits. In short, everyone's face was filled with bright smiles. However, Qin Feiyang frowned. Brother, what are you thinking about? Fire Lotus asked in a low voice. I thought that this Chengli would make things difficult for us, but I didn't expect that he didn't do anything. Could it be that I'm thinking too much, and Feng Wenhai didn't instigate him at all? Or, is he an upright person and wasn't bribed by Feng Wenhai? Qin Feiyang muttered. Since we're here, let's take it easy. What's the point of thinking so much? Hui smiled and raised his head to look at the cave residence. On the stone door of each cave residence, there was a number, from 1 to 1,000. Someone suddenly said, Elder Chung, let us distribute the cave residence by ourselves. How do we do it? Although there's no difference between these 1,000 cave residences, these numbers represent strength. What do you mean by that? It's very simple. From number 1 to 1,000 cave residences, from top to bottom, the person with the strongest cultivation will choose the cave residence at the top, and those with weak cultivation will naturally choose the cave residence at the bottom. The group of people discussed animatedly. Hui glanced at the group of people with a hint of ridicule in his eyes. He suddenly said, I object. Everyone was stunned and turned to look at Hui. Why should we look at cultivation? If we want to look at it, we have to look at strength. Hui said. Strength. Hearing this, everyone's pupil shrank and couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang, who was standing next to Hui. In terms of strength, this person was definitely number 1. Wait, although this Zhang Haoyan is famous, we haven't really seen him fight. That's right. Even at the mountain peak, he only released a murderous aura. Although his murderous aura is terrifying, it doesn't mean that he has strength. Everyone secretly discussed. Indeed, after Qin Feiyang entered Sky Dragon City, he basically didn't make a move. The only times he did was when he killed the two black-clothed men, fought with Black Dragon and Ye Yun's group. But very few people knew about these things. As for killing the black-clothed men, only people like Gong Zifeng and Gu Yong knew. As for fighting Black Dragon, only Hua Yi secretly saw it. As for killing Ye Yun's group, only Fire Lotus and the upper echelons of Nine Heavens Palace knew. And these people in front of him knew nothing. Zhang Haoyin, I want to challenge you. Whoever wins, the number 1 cave mansion will belong to him. One of the black-clothed youths gritted his teeth and walked out of the crowd, looking at Zhang Haoyin. Challenge? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Although your reputation is great, we haven't seen your strength with our own eyes. If you really have strength, then please show it and let us be convinced. The black-clothed youth shouted. Yes, we've just arrived at Nine Heavens Palace and will definitely be bullied by other disciples. So we have to unite. Since we have to unite, then there has to be someone to lead us. And this person has to be the strongest among us. Please show us your strength. Let us see if you're the real deal, or if you don't live up to your reputation. Do you have the qualifications to make us listen to your orders? The others also shouted. Qin Feiyang was stunned as he looked at the group of people who were in high spirits. Did he say that he wanted to lead everyone? And challenge him? Don't be so childish, okay? He entered Nine Heavens Palace purely to investigate the whereabouts of his ancestors. He didn't care about anything else. I don't care what you want. I won't accept your challenge as long as you don't come and bother me, Qin Feiyang said indifferently and walked towards Cave Mansion number 1000. In any case, there was no difference between the Immortals' Cave, and where one lived was the same. Why should they fight over it? Boring. Zhang Haoyin, what do you mean by this? Didn't you hear that we won't be bullied only if we unite? You don't even dare to accept my challenge? Is your reputation really undeserved? The black-clothed youth said angrily. Chapter 1990. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and turned to the young man in black. So we won't be bullied if we're united? Of course. The young man in black nodded. I didn't expect you to be so naive, even though you're at the Perfection Battle God realm. Elder Chang said before that there are more than 8 million disciples in the outer sect. Just like you, they all relied on their own abilities to enter the Nine Heavens Palace. I'd like to ask, which one of them is ordinary? If they really come to bully you, do you think you'll be able to fight them? So I'd like to advise you to stop wasting your time. Work hard on your cultivation and increase your strength. That's the right way to go. As for me, just think of me as someone with an undeserved reputation. After saying that, Qin Feiyang stepped forward and landed in front of the cave dwelling. He walked in without looking back. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus followed him and left. Hui shook his head in disappointment. Originally, he wanted Qin Feiyang to show off his skills. However, in the end, Qin Feiyang left without saying a word. In the crowd, Gao Shui glanced at Qin Feiyang's back, then looked at the 6 young men beside her and asked, "What should we do?" Zhang Haoyin is right. Wasting your time is useless. Besides, we have Gong Zifeng to back us up. We don't have to worry about anyone bullying us. Let's just find a cave dwelling, one of the young men said. The other 4 nodded. Seeing Qin Feiyang and his group entering the cave dwelling with Gao Shaoyi's group, the young man in black and his group were stunned. What should we do? Are we still going to fight for first place? Fight. We have to decide who's better. As for Zhang Haoyin and his group, we don't have to worry about them. After all, there are always a few people who don't fit in. That's right. If they encounter any trouble in the future, don't expect us to help them. The group of people was furious. Qin Feiyang chose cave dwelling number 1000. Qin Rushuang, Fire Lotus, and Hua Yi chose abodes number 999, 998, and 997 respectively. Gao Shaoyi and the 5 young men did not show off in the slightest. They chose caves 996 to 991. Inside the 1000th cave abode, Qin Feiyang stood in the middle of the cave and looked around. This cave abode was quite big. It was squarish and was about 200 to 300 feet wide. But it was very simple. Other than a shabby futon on the ground, there was nothing else. But there was one thing that Qin Feiyang was quite satisfied with. The cave abode was very clean and not damp. To him, the cave abode was not important at all. That was because he had been cultivating in the castle the whole time. Rumble. Outside, the sound of battle suddenly rang out. Qin Feiyang ignored him. He stood in place and lowered his head, muttering to himself. Soon, the two women walked over hand in hand. They were Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus. Seeing Qin Feiyang lowering his head and pondering, a trace of suspicion appeared in their eyes, but they didn't say anything to disturb him. A moment later, Qin Feiyang heaved a sigh of relief. When he saw Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus behind him, he asked in surprise, "When did you guys arrive?" Qin Rushuang was speechless. "You didn't even know that we came in. What are you thinking about? Why are you so engrossed?" Qin Feiyang said, "I was wondering if Empyrean Palace has a library or something like that." Library? Qin Rushuang was stunned. Regardless of the relationship between the ancestor and Empyrean Palace, there's no mistake that he once entered Empyrean Palace. Perhaps his past deeds might be recorded in some historical books. Qin Feiyang pondered. Library? Qin Rushuang murmured. Qin Feiyang looked outside the cave abode and asked, "Are they still fighting outside?" "Yes. By the looks of it, they won't stop until there's a winner." Fire Lotus chuckled. "A bunch of idiots. They're just wasting time." Qin Feiyang sneered and looked at the two of them. "Did you guys notice something that Elder Chung said?" "What?" The two of them were suspicious. "He said that there's a person on this sword peak." Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. "I think he did say that." The two of them recalled carefully and nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "I'm curious about a person who lives alone on this sword peak." "What's there to be curious about?" Fire Lotus was speechless. "Girl, you don't understand. People like him are either extremely strong or extremely weak. There's a difference between the two. The former is someone who disdains to live on the same sword peak as others. In other words, he's an arrogant and solitary person. The latter is someone who is ostracized by others. In that case, he must be someone who's timid, weak, and has an inferiority complex." Qin Feiyang chuckled. "Sounds like it does make some sense." Fire Lotus mumbled. "In your eyes, which one of Qin Dage's words makes sense?" Qin Rushuang teased. Fire Lotus was stunned, and her cheeks flushed red. She hurriedly explained, "Sister Rushuang, don't misunderstand. I'm just treating Qin Dage like an older brother. I don't mean anything else." "Did I say anything?" "I don't think so. You're the one who thought about it. Fire Lotus, we're all good sisters. Tell me the truth. Don't tell me you've really fallen for this guy." Qin Rushuang walked up and chuckled. "Sister Rushuang, I really didn't. In my eyes, he's like an older brother." Fire Lotus said hurriedly. "Haha, look at how anxious you are. I'm just joking. However, if you really like him, don't hide it. After all, the Qin family still needs him to carry on the family line. One mermaid princess is not enough." Qin Rushuang snickered. Fire Lotus was a little helpless. "I say, can you stop spouting nonsense? Carry on the family line? You can do it too." Qin Feiyang said unhappily. "Can I do the same?" Qin Rushuang said, "What's the difference? You're the ancestor's daughter. By right, carrying on the family line is your responsibility." Qin Feiyang said, "I'm a woman. There's a saying that doesn't work that way. A married daughter is like water that has been poured out. So, kid, you can't escape the task of carrying on the family line." Qin Rushuang said lightly, "You're getting more and more excited." Qin Feiyang was speechless. Buzz. At this moment, Qin Feiyang's image crystal sounded. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. With a wave of his hand, the door of the cave dwelling closed, and he took out the image crystal. Immediately, a purple-robed young man appeared. It was Gongzi Feng. As soon as Gongzi Feng saw Qin Feiyang, he cupped his hands and smiled. "Brother Jiang, congratulations. What are you congratulating me for?" Qin Feiyang looked at him in confusion. Congratulations on entering the ninth heaven palace. Gao Xiaolong and I have already discussed. We'll look for you tonight and have a few drinks. Gong Zifeng smiled. Is there a need for that? Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Of course there is. This time, not only did you successfully enter the ninth heaven palace, but you also fought back against my father and the rest. I feel so good. Gong Zifeng laughed. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. If your father hears you, he'll definitely scold you for being a white-eyed wolf. Tisk, do you think I care? Gong Zifeng smiled disdainfully. All right. Don't come tonight, in case someone sees you. As for Gao Xiaolong, you can go visit his sister. Tell me about Qin Batian. Did you get anything in the past few days? Qin Feiyang asked. No. I've asked many people, but they don't know the details. Gong Zifeng shook his head. Qin Feiyang asked, what about your father, grandfather, elder brother, and elder sister? I've asked my grandfather. Of course, I just mentioned it casually. After all, I didn't dare to ask about it openly. But my grandfather's attitude surprised me. Gong Zifeng frowned. Qin Feiyang and Qin Rushuang looked at each other and asked, what's his attitude? He seemed a little angry and regretful. He even scolded me and warned me not to mention the name Qin Batian again. Gong Zifeng said, angry? Regretful? Qin Feiyang and Qin Rushuang both frowned. What was the meaning of this? Brother Jiang, I don't think there's any hope for this. It's my fault for being useless. If it were my elder brother and elder sister, my grandfather and the others might have revealed a thing or two. Gong Zifeng blamed himself. It can't be helped. They don't like you. Oh, right. What's wrong with your elder brother recently? Why isn't there any movement? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. After the incident at the treasure pavilion, he was punished by my grandfather to face the wall. I reckon that he won't be jumping around for a long time in the future. Gong Zifeng said with a smile, gloating, don't laugh so happily. If he doesn't come out, I won't have a chance to deal with him. Qin Feiyang said. That's true. Gong Zifeng frowned and asked, should I go to my grandfather and plead for him? That won't be necessary. Moreover, it'll only be disadvantageous for you if you suddenly plead for Feng Zijuan, because your grandfather will be surprised. Why are you suddenly so kind? He might keep an eye on you then. You just have to do one thing. Tell Feng Zijuan that I've entered the Empyrean Palace, and he won't be able to resist taking action against me. Whether it's him or his lackeys, as long as someone comes, I'll have a way to fight back. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Gong Zifeng said with admiration, Brother Jiang, you're really far-sighted. I'll listen to you. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, besides, is there a library in the Empyrean Palace? Library? Gong Zifeng was stunned. Qin Feiyang added, a place like the library is fine too. There's no such place. Gong Zifeng shook his head. No? The Empyrean Palace has existed for so many years. There must be some historical records. Where are they? Qin Feiyang frowned. So, what you want is these historical records. Then why don't you just say the historical records? Why the library? There are indeed such historical records. Once, I overheard my father and grandfather talking about this in private. All the historical records of the Empyrean Palace from ancient times to the present seem to be in the Vice Palace Master's study. Gong Zifeng said. Chapter 1991. Vice Palace Master? Qin Feiyang frowned. Although he had never seen this person before, as the second in command of Nine Heavens Palace, he must be very strong. Gong Zifeng shook his head. Our Vice Palace Master is a little mysterious. Mysterious? Qin Feiyang was taken aback and asked suspiciously, what do you mean? It means that he's elusive. The entire Nine Heavens Palace? That's not right. It should be said that in the entire northern region, only a handful of people have seen the Vice Palace Master. Gong Zifeng said. So mysterious? Qin Feiyang was surprised and asked, you haven't seen him before? Not just me, other than the disciples on the heaven list. No one else has seen him before. Even the disciples on the earth list don't know what he looks like. Actually, it makes sense. Such a big figure. How can we easily see him? Gong Zifeng shook his head. What about the palace master of Nine Heavens Palace? Qin Feiyang asked. Palace master? Someone stronger than the vice palace master must be even more mysterious. I've heard of the vice palace master, but this Lord Palace Master, I've never heard anyone mention him since I entered Nine Heavens Palace. I'm wondering if there's such a person. Gong Zifeng smiled bitterly. Sure enough, each one is more mysterious than the other. Qin Feiyang muttered and asked, Who's the one in charge? Usually, it's the palace masters. Gong Zifeng said. Qin Feiyang frowned. Including your grandfather? Gong Zifeng nodded. Qin Feiyang said in realization. So the palace masters are the ones in charge. No wonder your grandfather dared to be so arrogant. Not all of them. The one in charge is actually the Grand Elder. Our Nine Heavens Palace has a total of 10 Grand Elders. They are the strongest existences in our Nine Heavens Palace apart from the Palace Master and Vice Palace Master. But the other 9 Grand Elders are immersed in cultivation and never care about worldly affairs. The 2 Palace Masters have never shown themselves either. So, the person who truly controls the Nine Heavens Palace is actually the First Elder. Although the various Palace Masters possess real power, they do not dare to act rashly before the First Elder. Gong Zifeng said. Great Elder. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. After pondering for a moment, he said, There's something I need you to investigate. What is it? Gong Zifeng was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, The matter of me slandering the Nine Heavens Palace. I'm sure you already know about it. Yes. There's no need to doubt this. Grandfather and father must be behind this. Gong Zifeng said. I know it's them, but I have no proof. Qin Feiyang said. You want evidence? Gong Zifeng asked. Yes. It would be best if we could find those who were ordered to spread the rumors, because only by catching them can we have solid evidence. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Although Feng Yuan and Feng Wanhai were the masterminds behind the scenes, their positions in Nine Heavens Palace were too high. If they directly started with them, they might fall into their trap. Therefore, they had to start with the people below them. Hearing this, Gong Zifeng frowned. He lowered his head and fell into deep thought. After a while, he raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang. He said, I understand what you mean. However, the people who spread the rumors are most definitely the trusted aides of my grandfather and the others. As for those trusted aides, I know absolutely nothing about them. I fear that it will be a bit difficult to investigate them. Qin Feiyang said, No matter how difficult it is, we have to find them. All right, I'll try my best. Gong Zifeng nodded. I believe in my eyesight. I won't misjudge them. Qin Feiyang smiled. Haha. Gong Zifeng laughed and said, All right, I'll go arrange it now. You have to be careful on your side, especially Chengli. He's a treacherous person who doesn't know what he looks like. Is that so? Qin Feiyang was surprised. When father first brought me to Nine Heavens Palace, I stayed in the outer sect for a while, so I know his character very well. Gong Zifeng said. Got it. Qin Feiyang nodded. Gong Zifeng's virtual image disappeared immediately. Qin Feiyang put away the image crystal and looked at Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus with a smile. It seems that we've been fooled by Cheng Li's appearance. Humph. He better not get in the way. Qin Rushuang said coldly. Cheng Li is nothing to worry about. Even if he really wants to deal with us, we don't have to pay attention to him. The most important thing now is to find a way to sneak into the Vice Palace Master's study. Qin Feiyang smiled. Fire Lotus asked, Qin Dage, why don't you let Gong Zifeng go? Girl, that's the Vice Palace Master's study. Even his grandfather, Feng Yuan, may not be able to get in, let alone a mere Gong Zifeng. It's already very good of him to tell us where the historical records are hidden. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Fire Lotus said worriedly, but the Vice Palace Master's study must be a dragon's den. Qin Feiyang clenched his hands and said with a sharp look in his eyes, Even if it's a dragon's den or a tiger's den, we have to go. Rumble. The battle outside was getting more and more intense. The entire Sword Peak began to tremble slowly. Damn it, are you done? All of a sudden, an impatient cold voice sounded from the cave abode at the top of the Sword Peak. There was a trace of hostility in the voice. The more than 200 people outside immediately looked up and found that the voice came from cave abode number 1. There was someone in cave abode number 1? Wait, Elder Chung seemed to have said that there was originally a person on this sword peak. Now that you mention it, it seems that Elder Chung really did say that. Cave abode number 1 has already been occupied? Then why are we still fighting? Everyone frowned. What are you afraid of? Being alone on this sword peak. He must be bullied and has nowhere to go. Cave abode number 1. We must take it. The black-clothed young man who first challenged Qin Feiyong said. Really? The voice sounded again from cave abode number 1, full of disdain. Yes. The black-clothed young man shouted. Qin Feiyong naturally heard the voice, waved his hand and said, Let's go out and have a look. The three of them walked out of the cave abode. Hua Yi, Gao Xiaowei, and the other 5 young men just came out of their respective cave abodes. Obviously, they all heard the voice. Brother Jiang. Gao Xiaowei secretly greeted Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong nodded with a smile and looked up at the black-clothed young man. The black-clothed young man looked at cave abode number 1 with a provocative face. The rest of the people, standing behind the black-clothed young man, also looked at cave abode number 1 covetously, showing signs of following the black-clothed young man's lead. Qin Feiyong looked at cave abode number 1 again. The stone door was tightly closed. There was no more sound coming from inside. There was dead silence at the scene. What kind of person could it be? Hua Yi walked to Qin Feiyong's side, his eyes full of curiosity. Boom. Suddenly, the stone door of cave abode number 1 slowly opened. Tada! The sound of footsteps sounded one after another. The footsteps were very light. However, there was a sense of oppression. Do you want to intimidate us with just a little momentum? Aren't you too naive? The black-clothed young man raised his eyebrows and sneered. But inside cave abode number 1, there was no response except for the sound of footsteps, and no one in the cave abode appeared for a long time. Gradually, the footsteps became heavier and heavier. The sense of oppression became more and more obvious. Even everyone's heartbeat could not help but beat with the frequency of the footsteps. Qin Rushuang's pupils shrank, whispering, He's not a simple character. Fire Lotus nodded. It seemed that this person was the first type of person Qin Dage mentioned, a solitary expert. His momentum is quite scary, but he hasn't shown up. I think he's bluffing. You don't want to come out? Well, I'll personally invite you out and see if you're a dragon or a worm. The black-clothed young man took a step forward and rushed toward cave abode number 1. Fire Lotus frowned. Is this person crazy? How can he provoke others like this? Qin Feiyong sized up the black-clothed young man and smiled. Can't you see? He obviously wants to dominate this sword peak, so he must perform well. Perform? I think this time, he's going to paint a tiger but end up looking like a dog. Qin Rushuang sneered. Let's wait and see. Qin Feiyong snickered secretly. At this moment, the black-clothed young man had already landed outside cave abode number 1 and was about to enter. Dong! The footsteps suddenly became extremely loud, as if a giant beast was walking. The ground was shaking. At the same time, the invisible sense of oppression also soared in an instant. The black-clothed young man outside the cave abode suddenly stiffened, and his raised foot could not step into the cave abode. What's going on? The crowd below was in an uproar. Qin Feiyong was shocked. Just a sense of oppression was able to block the black-clothed young man outside? One must know. The black-clothed young man's cultivation was not simple. He was a perfect realm war god. Boom. The black-clothed young man was of course unwilling to give up. He immediately released his divine power to fight against the invisible pressure. Dong! The footsteps became more and more deafening. The invisible sense of oppression was still increasing, like a tide, colliding with the black-clothed young man's divine power. You dare to be arrogant with this little ability? About 10 breaths later, the voice finally sounded, containing a shocking amount of hostility. Following closely, the sound of his footsteps was like thunder, deafening. Everything within a radius of tens of thousands of miles was trembling. The invisible sense of oppression instantly shattered the black-clothed young man's divine power and drowned him. Plop. The black-clothed young man's legs turned to jelly and he fell to the ground. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He was shocked. This time, he had really kicked an iron plate. How could this be? The people below looked at the black-clothed young man, and their hearts were in a perilous situation. Previously, they had fought with the black-clothed young man in order to fight for first place, so they knew how powerful he was. But now, he was kneeling down. The most unbelievable thing was that it was only the sound of footsteps. Boom. Suddenly, the invisible sense of oppression descended from the sky and drowned everyone here, including Qin Feiyong and the others. Plop. One by one, they knelt down. Gao Xiaowei and the other 5 young men were not spared either. Everyone's face was filled with fear. What kind of terrifying existence was this? Chapter 1992. However, in the midst of their shock, someone noticed the situation of Qin Feiyong and the others and immediately exclaimed, "How is this possible?" Hearing the exclamation, everyone looked over. Their eyes widened in anger and disbelief. The 4 of them stood on the spot as if nothing had happened. Their bodies did not even tremble. How did they do it? One should know. Even a perfect war god would not be able to withstand this pressure. However, a beginner war god, 2 beginner war gods, and 1 advanced war god could stand there steadily. What was going on? Everyone's heart was filled with incredulity. But at the same time, Qin Feiyong's expression was also filled with astonishment. However, this astonishment did not come from the mysterious expert in Cave Abode No. 1. It came from Hua Yi and Fire Lotus. He had opened the door of potential. This little bit of pressure naturally had no effect on him. As for Qin Rushuang, before she entered the ancient castle to comprehend the ultimacy of becoming a god, she had also opened all the doors of potential with the help of Yu Huang, Willow Tree, and the others. At that time, Gongsun Bei was also there. After all, Gongsun Bei had always been the person Qin Feiyong wanted the most. Therefore, he was not stingy with this person. However, Hua Yi and Fire Lotus could also ignore this pressure. This was somewhat strange. Could it be that the 2 of them had also opened the door of potential? But that was not right. When Fire Lotus had just condensed her body, she was not wearing anything. Qin Feiyong had seen her from head to toe. Of course, he did not see the potential mark on Fire Lotus's chest. This proved that Fire Lotus did not open the door of potential. If she did not open the door of potential, then why could she ignore this pressure? The more Qin Feiyong thought about it, the more puzzled he became. He could not help but ask, "Girl, don't you feel the pressure?" "Yes, but for some reason, this pressure does not seem to have any effect on me." Fire Lotus thought to herself. She was also puzzled. It doesn't work. The corner of Qin Feiyong's mouth twitched. Why was that? Hui could also use other reasons to explain himself. For example, he was hiding his cultivation, or he had some strange treasure on him. However, he was very clear about the Fire Lotus's situation. His cultivation was only at the initial stage of the War God stage, and he didn't have any rare treasures on him. Wait a minute. Could it be related to her undead body? Now, Qin Feiyong could only make such a guess. This was because the only difference between the Fire Lotus and the others was that she was an undead. Inside the No. 1 cave residence, there was also a surprised voice. Obviously, this mysterious expert also noticed the situation of Qin Feiyong and the other 3. Dong. Following closely, the footsteps became louder and louder. The pressure also became more and more terrifying. Not only were the sword peaks and the ground shaking, but the other sword peaks were also shaking violently. It was obvious. This mysterious expert wanted to compete with Qin Feiyong and the other 3. However, Qin Feiyong and the other 3 remained indifferent and as steady as Mount Tai. On the contrary, the disciples of the other sword peaks roared with dissatisfaction. "Damn lunatic, what are you doing? Can't you just stop and let us have a few days of peace?" Fortunately, it's you. If it were someone else, they would have been kicked out of the 9th Heaven Palace long ago. Angry shouts came one after another. Qin Feiyong and the other 3 looked at each other. What was the background of the person in the No. 1 cave residence? How could he be called a lunatic? And listening to these words, It was not difficult to judge that this person must be a lawless person who often caused trouble. This revealed an important piece of information. This person must have a certain identity. Otherwise, the Ninth Heaven Palace would not allow him to cause trouble like this. And at the number 1 sword peak, Chengli stood at the edge of the cliff and looked at Qin Feiyang's direction. The corners of his mouth curved into a meaningful smile. A lunatic, an arrogant person. When these two people met, there would definitely be friction. Zhang Haoyin, don't blame me. This is all Feng Wenhai's arrangement. If you die in the hands of a lunatic, blame Feng Wenhai. Murmuring, Chengli turned around and strode away. There was an ancient hall in front of him. Above the door, there were a few bold words engraved. Outer Deacon Hall. Interesting. Seeing that Qin Feiyang and the other 3 had not knelt down, a mocking voice once again sounded from the number 1 cave residence. I don't think it's that interesting. It's purely a senseless act. Qin Feiyang looked at the number 1 cave residence and said indifferently, a senseless act? Haha, kid, you're crazy. If that's the case, then I'll show you a less senseless act. The voice fell. The sound of footsteps dissipated and was replaced by a terrifying murderous aura, roaring out from the number 1 cave residence. Murderous aura? Qin Feiyang was taken aback, and then the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Competing with him in murderous aura? Wasn't this looking for a beating? Boom. At that moment, Qin Feiyang's body shook, and a monstrous murderous aura rushed out from his body. Accompanied by a loud bang, the two murderous auras collided. There was no suspense. Qin Feiyang obtained victory by crushing his opponent as easily as crushing rotten wood. He didn't dare to say anything else. But in terms of murderous aura, if he said that he was second, no one would dare to say that he was first. This was confidence. The people in the number 1 cave residence were incomparably surprised. What kind of person had come this time? The murderous aura that erupted was actually more terrifying than his? No. The word terrifying could no longer be used to describe it. This level of murderous aura was even dozens or hundreds of times more than his. This is the act you want to perform? It's still so boring. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, his words full of provocation. Inside the number 1 cave residence, there was dead silence. Boom. All of a sudden, an expanse of blood-red light gushed out and pounced towards Qin Feiyang like a tide. The bloody light not only had a monstrous murderous aura, but also carried a terrifying divine power. Fire Lotus's eyes trembled, secretly saying, Qin Dage, be careful, this is a divine art. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. Looking at the number 1 cave residence, he said indifferently, I'll return it to you. Boom. As soon as his words fell, he raised his head and slapped his palm. Golden light burst out from his palm, and the bloody light suddenly turned in the air and rushed into the cave residence. In the cave residence, there was a muffled groan immediately. Obviously, the people in the cave residence were seriously injured. It's getting more and more interesting. However, not only was this person not angry, his mood was even higher. Divine power was like a waterfall, rolling out. Brother Jiang, this person should be a battle maniac. If this continues, I guess there will be no end to it. Huari frowned. Battle maniac. Qin Feiyang murmured, his eyes flashing, and said with a smile, this kind of person, to others, may be a lunatic, but I like it very much. You still like it? Huai was speechless. The so-called battle maniac was someone who wanted to fight with anyone he saw, and he would never give up until the outcome was decided. Being together with this kind of person would cause trouble at any time and place. Who would like such a person? But this guy in front of him seemed to have met a confidant. Sure enough, each and every one of them was a weirdo. Actually, my brother also has the potential to be a battle maniac. Fire Lotus covered her mouth and laughed. Makes sense. Huai nodded. Qin Feiyang was stunned, helplessly looked at Fire Lotus and said, Girl, I don't have the potential in this area. Others say that only people who are like-minded will absorb each other. Since you're not a battle maniac, then why do you still like him? Huai was very puzzled. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and sighed. In a word, I'm tired of scheming against each other. What the hell? Wai frowned. What did this have to do with scheming against each other? Battle maniacs, when encountering problems, basically rely on their fists to solve them. This kind of person, although sometimes difficult to deal with, is usually more straightforward and not scheming. So, when interacting with this kind of person, you don't have to be on guard at all times. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. I see. Fire Lotus nodded in realization and laughed. Now that you've said it, it does make sense. That's what I said. In your eyes, everything he says makes sense. Qin Rushuang teased. Sister Rushuang. Fire Lotus pouted coquettishly and could not help but blush. However, under the cover of the mask, no one saw it. Qin Feiyong raised his head and looked at cave abode number 1, asking with a smile, Sir, is there anything else interesting to watch? There was a moment of silence in the cave abode before a voice sounded, Kid, you're not the ordinary kind of crazy. Thank you for the compliment. Qin Feiyong smiled. Tell me your name. Lunatic said. Zhang Haoyin. Qin Feiyong said. Zhang Haoyin, I also like people like you, but it's far from enough for me to approve of you. Lunatic said. Do I need your approval? Qin Feiyong asked in return. Haha. Interesting, this is too interesting. Lunatic laughed endlessly. Accompanied by the sound of something tearing through the air, a piece of paper flew out of the cave abode. Qin Feiyong grabbed it and lowered his head to take a look. A smile flashed across his face before he tore the paper into pieces and said with a smile, Then I'll see you there. Haha, I'll see you there. Madman laughed and then went silent. Hui asked suspiciously, Brother Jiang, what do you mean? That's right, brother. You didn't even show us what was written on the paper before you tore it into pieces. Fire Lotus was also a little displeased. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, Let's go to Sword Peak number 1 to get our identity badge. After saying that, he turned around and took a step forward, stepping into the void and leaving. Qin Rushuang and the other two looked at each other with suspicion in their eyes. What were the two of them playing at? After Qin Feiyong and the other three left, the pressure also dissipated. The black-clothed youth and the others stood up and glanced at cave abode number 1 before looking at Qin Feiyong's back view with reverence in their eyes. This was a true expert. Unfortunately, this person was not willing to be with them. Otherwise, he would definitely be the king of this sword peak. I don't care what you want to do, as long as you don't disturb my cultivation. Otherwise, even if the heavens come down, they won't be able to save you. Lunatic's voice was heard with a terrifying murderous aura. Understood, understood. The black-clothed youth and the others shuddered and hurriedly nodded respectfully. However, why did those words sound so familiar? Wait a minute. It was Zhang Haoyin. Not long ago, Zhang Haoyin also said the same thing. I don't care what you want to do, as long as you don't disturb me. It seemed like the two of them had similar personalities. Chapter 1993. The lunatic had stopped. The disciples of the other sword peaks also returned to their cave residences one after another. However, there were also many disciples who gathered together and discussed with righteous indignation. Senior brother, may I know how to get to the number 1 sword peak? Above one of the sword peaks, Qin Feiyong stopped and looked at the few young men and women who were at peak perfection and asked with a smile. Go straight. The highest sword peak in the middle is the number 1 sword peak. A young man said without looking up. Thank you, senior brother. Qin Feiyong cupped his hands and smiled, then left with Hualien and the other two. Wait. But the young man suddenly froze and hurriedly turned to look at Qin Feiyong and the other three. Qin Feiyong stopped and looked at the young man. Senior brother, what's the matter? He had an extremely humble look on his face. The young man said, You don't even know the number 1 sword peak. Are you new disciples? Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded. The young man said, So, that lunatic just now was mad at you? It can't be considered flipping out. It's just that some people, competing for the first place, provoked that person. Qin Feiyong smiled. Competing for the first place? The young men and women shook their heads when they heard this. With that lunatic here, do you think it's your turn to compete for the first place? You're really unlucky to be assigned to that lunatic's sword peak. Since we're from the same sect, we'll give you a piece of advice. Don't provoke that lunatic. Otherwise, you'll never have a peaceful day in the ninth heaven palace. They looked at Qin Feiyang and the other four. Although they were giving advice out of goodwill, there was a hint of gloating in their eyes. Thank you, senior brothers and sisters. We'll remember it. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and thanked him. Then, he turned around and left. Fire Lotus followed Qin Feiyang and thought, brother, why does it sound more and more wrong? I also feel like I've been tricked. Qin Rushuang said, this matter is actually very clear. We were purposely arranged by Chengli to go to that sword peak. Hua Yi sighed. Deliberately arranged? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He turned to Hua Yi and asked suspiciously, Brother Hua, what do you mean? You wish. The outer sect has a total of 10,000 sword peaks, which can accommodate 10 million disciples. And now, there are only a little over 8 million outer sect disciples. In other words, currently, there are still over 100 empty sword peaks in the outer sect. But this Chengli, why didn't he arrange for us to go to other sword peaks? Why did he want us to go to that madman's sword peak? Hui said, maybe they don't want to waste resources. After all, it's a waste of resources for one person to occupy an entire sword peak. Qin Feiyang guessed. Brother Jiang, will you die if you don't act stupid? With your brain, I've already explained it so clearly. How could you not have thought of it? Hui said angrily. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Alas, originally, we all thought that this Elder Chang was a good person and was not instigated by Feng Wenhai. However, in reality, he had already set a trap for us unknowingly. One is a battle maniac known as the Madman. The other is known as an arrogant and conceited person. The meeting of these two people is equivalent to Mars colliding with Earth. Our Elder Chang isn't simple at all. Hui sighed. Fire Lotus asked, you mean, he wants to use the madman to get rid of us? Isn't this obvious? But he is also one step behind. Two people with similar personalities may not necessarily become opponents. They may also become friends. Hui smiled. Friends. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus heard this and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. They found that Qin Feiyang had a smile on his face. Could it be that the two of them would really become friends? Sword Peak Number 1. Duty Hall. Chengli leaned against the chair beside the tea table and leisurely sipped his tea. Disciples Jiang Haoyin, Jiang Rushuang, Jiang Fire Lotus, and Hua Yi request to see Elder Cheng. Suddenly, several voices came from outside the door. Chengli was stunned and looked up at the door. He saw Qin Feiyang and the other three standing respectfully outside the door. What's going on? Looking at Qin Feiyang and the other three, the teacup in his hand almost fell to the ground. He had thought that the lunatic would at least give them a good beating, if not kill them. But now, the four of them were unharmed? What was going on? They did not fight? But how was this possible? As an outer sect elder, he knew the madman's temper better than anyone. Once the previous situation happened, they would definitely fight. Elder, what's wrong? Qin Feiyang and the other three looked at each other. A smile flashed in their eyes, but they looked at Chengli suspiciously. No. Chengli came back to his senses and quickly waved his hand. He asked with a smile, why are you looking for me? Elder, didn't you say that after settling down, we'll come to get the identity token? Qin Feiyang said. Yes. Chengli nodded repeatedly, got up and walked to the desk next to him. He said, come in. Yes. The four of them walked into the hall one after another. Chengli also sat at the desk and took out 4 white tokens. The tokens were made of jade and could be as big as a baby's palm. On the front side, there was a flame pattern, and the back side was blank. Chengli said with a smile, tell me your names again. Jiang Haoyin, Jiang Fire Lotus, Jiang Rushuang, Hua Yi. The four of them spoke one after another. Chengli waved his fingers, and on the back side of the 4 tokens, the names of Qin Feiyang and the other 3 appeared. This is your identity medallion, said Yifuyin. After Chengli said, he took out 4 Chinkuan bags and put them together with the 4 tokens. He said with a smile, these are your clothes. Thank you, Elder. Qin Feiyang and the other 3 stepped forward one by one and took their identity token and Shinkuin bags. There's something that I have to remind you of. It doesn't matter what you wear outside, but in the Empyrean Palace, you must wear clothes with flame patterns. If you don't wear it, you will be punished. This is the rule. In addition, the Empyrean Palace forbids private fighting. If you have any grudges that you have to settle, you can go to the battlefield. Once you enter the battlefield, you can fight however you want. It doesn't matter even if you kill the other party. Chengli said, forbidding fighting? Qin Feiyang and the other three frowned. Qin Feiyang said suspiciously, Elder, since fighting is prohibited, why did that lunatic of our sword peak dare to fight in public? Did he fight? Chengli was stunned. Yes, Elder, you didn't know about the big commotion before? Qin Feiyang said. I didn't pay much attention to it just now. However, this lunatic is a little special. If you can bear with it, then bear with it. When I have time, I will also talk to him. Chengli laughed. Didn't pay much attention? Qin Feiyang and the other three looked at each other. This was really a lame excuse. However, they did not expose it in front of him. Chengli waved his hand and laughed. All right, go. Disciple will take his leave. The four of them bowed respectfully, then turned around and walked out. Hui secretly said, Did you guys notice that even this Chengli is a little afraid of that battle maniac? The three of them nodded. Hui sent a sound transmission. It seems that the identity of this lunatic needs to be investigated. What is this? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at a black slate on the wall. The slate was 5 to 6 meters long, and there were rows of small words written on it. That's the bulletin board. It's used to issue missions, Chengli said. Bulletin board? Qin Feiyang and the other three were stunned. Look at the first line of missions. It's to find a ghost flower. The reward is 100 soul stones. In other words, as long as you find the ghost flower and hand it over to us, you will get 100 soul stones, and there is no upper limit. For example, if you hand over 100 ghost flowers, you will get 10,000 soul stones. Chengli explained with a smile. So that's how it is. The four of them suddenly understood and looked at it one by one. On the bulletin board, even if it was looking for something, the missions issued by our outer sect are basically the simplest. There is not much risk. Of course, the reward is definitely much lower. Chengli said. Qin Rushuang asked curiously, what about the inner and outer sect? The inner sect is definitely not comparable to the outer sect. The missions issued by the inner sect even include assassination. If you are not careful, you will lose your life. Of course, we will not let you kill good people. Those who are not listed as assassination targets are basically heinous people. As for the reward, there are missions as high as thousands, tens of thousands, and even hundreds of thousands. Chengli said. So high. The four of them were shocked. Actually, to us elders, especially the people from the law enforcement hall, these missions are simply nothing. The reason why we do not do it and instead issue missions is to give you disciples a way to earn soul stones. On the other hand, it is also a training for you. However, you are now outer sect disciples. Although the reward for the missions issued by the inner sect is higher, it is still too much for you. So, do not bite off more than you can chew. Chengli warned. Qin Rushuang's eyes shone brightly as she asked, in that case, outer sect disciples like us can also accept missions from the inner sect? No. I am warning you this as a precaution. Although outer sect disciples cannot accept missions from the inner sect, it is inevitable that they will have friends or relatives in the inner sect. In the past, there were many outer sect disciples who sought help from their friends or relatives in the inner sect in order to obtain more soul stones. However, this is very foolish. Many people have lost their lives because of this. Chengli sighed. Then why don't you put an end to this? Qin Feiyang frowned. We have put an end to it. There are even clear rules that forbid inner sect disciples from doing this. But even so, we can't stop them. For example, the four of you, Zhang Haoyan is in the inner sect. Zhang Rushuang, Zhang Fire Lotus, and Hua Yi are in the outer sect. You will privately seek help from Zhang Haoyan to accept missions from the inner sect and promise to give him a certain reward. If there is a reward, Zhang Haoyan will definitely keep his mouth shut. If Jiang Haoyan does not say anything, how would we elders know that he is actually helping you accept missions? So, this kind of thing cannot be put an end to. Cheng-Li said. That's true. The four of them nodded. Chapter 1994. So, you must remember what I said. Don't touch the missions of the inner sect. Being down to earth is the right way. Cheng-Li smiled. Thank you for your teachings, Elder. The four of them said gratefully. Go. Cheng-Li waved his hand and smiled. We'll take our leave. The four of them glanced at the bulletin board and left the hall. This Cheng-Li is really a smiling tiger. He cares so much about his disciples. I'm almost touched by him. Hui shook his head and sighed. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, We have to be on guard against this kind of person at all times. Fire Lotus said, Brother, I noticed that the mission of Death Fruit and Ghost Wood was also posted on the bulletin board. I saw it too. These herbs can only be exchanged for 100 soul stones, just like the ghost flower. They're really cheap. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Hui was slightly stunned and said, 100 soul stones are already a lot. Okay? Go to the treasure pavilion and see if they'll take out a soul stone. Treasure pavilion. Speaking of the treasure pavilion, Qin Feiyang thought of something. Why hadn't Shang Wanqiu responded? Was it really that difficult to get the treasure pavilion to trade with soul stones? Not long after Qin Feiyang and the other three left, the young man in black and the others also came in. Everyone else, leave first. One by one. Looking at the crowd, Cheng-Li frowned and said. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly left the main hall. Cheng-Li glanced at the young man in black standing by the table. He took out his token and asked, What's your name? Elder, my name is Ma Guang. The young man in black said respectfully. Cheng-Li asked calmly, Did something happen in your sword peak? Ma Guang looked hesitant. He was extremely wary of the strength that Lunatic had shown, so he didn't know how to answer Cheng-Li. I think it's necessary to tell you that the fate of the outer sect disciples is in my hands, Cheng-Li said indifferently, his words carrying an undisguised threat. Ma Guang's eyes flickered as he blurted out, Something did happen. We were discussing how to split the cave when the guy called Maniac suddenly went crazy and forced us all to kneel on the ground. Are we talking or fighting? Cheng-Li Dao said. Disciple knows his mistake. Ma Guang's body trembled, and he quickly knelt on the ground. Cheng-Li raised his eyebrows. Don't you know that our Nine Heavens Palace forbids private fights? Disciple does not know. But this disciple already knows his mistake and will not dare to do it again, Ma Guang said in a panic. Look at you. This elder didn't even say that I'm going to punish you, and you're already so scared. Get up. Cheng-Li said indifferently. Thank you, elder. Ma Guang said gratefully. He stood up and looked at Cheng-Li with fear and trepidation. Cheng-Li asked, Was there any friction between that madman and Jiang Haoyan back then? Yes. They even fought before, but Lunatic's methods seemed to be useless against Jiang Haoyan. Ma Guang did not dare to hide anything. He quickly recounted the situation back then. What? He can actually ignore Lunatic's oppression? Cheng-Li was in disbelief. In the end, Lunatic gave Jiang Haoyan a note, but we don't know what's written on it. We only heard what they said at the end. Be there or be square. Ma Guang said. Be there or be square. Cheng-Li frowned. Elder, is this matter very important? Ma Guang asked cautiously. It's not important. Cheng-Li smiled and said, How about this? This elder will give you a task. Elder, please instruct. As long as this disciple can do it, I will not shirk my duty. Ma Guang bowed. This was a good opportunity to curry favor with Cheng-Li. In the future, help this elder more and pay attention to the movements of Lunatic and Jiang Haoyan. If there's any situation, you have to inform this elder immediately, Cheng-Li said. Pay attention? Ma Guang was stunned. To put it nicely, pay attention. To put it bluntly, it was monitoring. But why did he have to monitor these two? Moreover, it didn't matter if he monitored others, but it had to be these two fierce people. If he was discovered by the other party, wouldn't he be in big trouble? To be able to enter the Nine Heavens Palace, how could Ma Guang be a foolish person? He really didn't want to do this kind of job. Cheng-Li said meaningfully, It seems that my words as an elder are not very useful. No, no, no. This disciple will definitely complete the mission. Ma Guang hurriedly waved his hand and promised. That's more like it. Do your job well for this elder. When the time comes, you won't be short of benefits. Cheng Li chuckled. Thank you, elder. Ma Guang nodded and bowed, looking flattered. And then there was Qin Feiyang. After returning to the Sword Peak, Hua Yi returned to his cave. Qin Feiyang, on the other hand, brought Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang into the castle and excitedly sorted out the spoils of war. After half a day of sorting, the results were finally out, and half a day inside the castle was only a short while outside. I have a total of 275,000 soul stones here. If you add the cripple's 50,000, there will be a total of 330,000. Qin Rushuang said with a smile. White-eyed wolf, mermaid princess, and the rest of cripple's 50,000 soul stones had almost been refined. In total, I have over 400 million divine gems, said Li Qiye. Fire Lotus also smiled. Not bad, not bad. Qin Feiyang nodded with satisfaction. What about you? The two girls looked at Qin Feiyang. They also have a lot of herbs and elixirs. Among them, the God Power Elixir and the Divine Life Elixir have the most herbs. There are also some herbs for the Life Elixir. However, there aren't any herbs for the other elixirs, such as the Heavenly Dust Elixir and the Four Elephants Infinite Elixir. I reckon that they are worth a few 100 million in total. As for the divine weapons and divine techniques, there are a few divine weapons, but they are all low-grade and middle-grade divine weapons. They aren't worth much. As for the divine techniques, there aren't any. Qin Feiyang smiled. Qin Rushuang said, Isn't there still that godly bow? Qin Feiyang took out the Sun Destroyer divine bow. Divine power surged and enveloped the entire ancient castle. He smiled and said, Our biggest gain this time, apart from the 330,000 soul stones, is this divine weapon. The Sun Destroyer divine bow was a pinnacle divine weapon that surpassed the supreme grade, so its value couldn't be measured by divine gems. Qin Rushuang and Fire Lotus looked at the Sun Destroyer divine bow with smiles in their eyes. But suddenly, Fire Lotus frowned and the smile in her eyes disappeared. She said in a low voice, Qin Dage, I suddenly thought of a problem. Go ahead. Qin Feiyang said. When we killed Nie Yun, although only Mu Tianyang and the other two were nearby, Feng Yuan and the other higher-ups must have seen it with their own eyes. We don't have to worry about Mu Tianyang and the other two. But this Feng Yuan, with his means, I think he will definitely reveal this matter to Nie Yun's father. At that time, the city lord of Star River City won't let it go. Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Lotus in surprise and praised. Not bad. You can think of so many things. Hualien chuckled. Actually, I also thought about this problem. But what does it matter? We are now in Ninth Heaven Palace. Even if the city lord of Star River City wants to avenge Nie Yun, he has no chance. Qin Feiyang smiled. Hualien asked, Then, what if the city lord has any relatives or friends in the Nine Heavens Palace? We don't cause trouble, but we are not afraid of trouble. Do you understand? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. We don't cause trouble, but we are not afraid of trouble. Fire Lotus pondered for a while and nodded with a smile. I understand. Boom. At this time, a powerful godly aura burst out all of a sudden. Qin Feiyang and the other two were stunned. They turned their heads and saw that the divine aura came from Zhao Tailai. I finally broke through, Qin Feiyang muttered. Zhao Tailai's aura had already risen to the level of an early-stage war god. Boom. Following closely, Tang Hai's aura also erupted. He also broke through? Qin Feiyang was stunned. This way, he had two more early-stage war gods by his side. Young Master. A moment later, Tang Hai and the other two retracted their aura, opened their eyes, and looked at Qin Feiyang excitedly. In the Black Tortoise world, they didn't even dare to think about becoming an early-stage war god. But ever since they followed this young man in front of them, not only did they break the shackles of the demon imprint and step into the war god realm, but they also stepped into the early-stage war god realm in such a short period of time. It was like a dream. The cultivation of an early-stage war god is far from enough in the ancient world. Continue to work hard. As for the soul stone, You don't need to think about it. Qin Feiyang smiled. Yes. The two nodded. They were extremely touched. Even the treasure pavilion was reluctant to use the soul stone to trade. But Qin Feiyang let them refine it without holding back. Where else could they find such a good young master in today's world? The decision back then was indeed correct. This man was someone worthy of them following, pledging their loyalty and protecting. Qin Feiyang looked at Qin Rushuang and smiled. You should also hurry up and cultivate. I know even without you telling me. Ever since she knew that Qin Batian was still alive, Qin Rushuang's desire for strength was unprecedentedly strong. If it wasn't for the assessment, she would have entered the ancient castle and refined the soul stone. Qin Feiyang smiled and appeared in the black tortoise world with Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and said, Qin Dage, why aren't you refining the soul stone in the ancient castle? It's still far from enough. Look at the blood Kirin. The reason why it hasn't become a god of war is because it didn't have enough soul stones before. Now, although we have obtained quite a lot, it still requires 100,000 soul stones to become a god of war. In other words, just the blood Kirin will consume 1/3 of what we obtained this time. If I refine more, how much will I have left? Qin Feiyang said sadly. Hearing this, Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. Why are you looking at me like that? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. You would rather not have it, and give it to your subordinates first. The blood Kirin and the others are so lucky to have met such a good young master. Fire Lotus shook her head and smiled. They have followed me through life and death. Of course, I can't treat them badly. Plus, if they become stronger, I will become stronger as well. It doesn't matter who refines the soul stone. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Fire Lotus's eyes flashed with a strange light when she heard this. At first, she didn't feel anything other than gratitude towards Qin Feiyang, because at that time, Qin Feiyang had allowed her to absorb the souls of the dead in the desert and form a physical body. But during this period of time, as she got along with him, she realized that this man had an irresistible charm that could captivate people at any time and place. This made her gradually become addicted to him. Now, there was an uncontrollable desire in her heart. She wished that she was this man's sister. If that was the case, then she would be very happy for the rest of her life. Chapter 1995. Qin Feiyang didn't know what Fire Lotus was thinking. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. The problem he had to deal with now wasn't just the soul stone and the herbs for the undead bottleneck-breaking elixir. There was also the elixir fire and the elixir furnace. Relatively speaking, the elixir fire and the elixir furnace were more important. After all, even if they found the herbs for the elixir, they couldn't refine it without the elixir fire and the elixir furnace. After a moment of silence, Qin Feiyang turned to Fire Lotus and said with a smile, Girl, help me go to the treasure pavilion. Treasure pavilion? Fire Lotus was stunned. Yes. Go to Shangguanqiu and buy 2 9th-grade elixir fires and a divine elixir furnace. Qin Feiyang said. Aren't you waiting for her to come to you? Fire Lotus was suspicious. These are 2 different things. Besides, we have a lot of divine gems now. It should be enough to buy these things. Also, if you have extra divine gems, buy some teleportation altars. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Okay, I'll go now. Fire Lotus nodded. Qin Feiyang then took out a few teleportation altars and handed them to Fire Lotus. He then sent Fire Lotus out. He then closed his eyes and extended his senses infinitely. Soon, he found Dan Wangkai. As for the teleportation altars, there were 30 or 40 of them in the interspatial rings of Niayun and the others. But of course, the more the better. At this moment, Dan Wangkai was like an ordinary person living in a small mountain village. He worked when the sun rose and rested when the sun set. In other words, Dan Wangkai was still in the state of meditation. The so-called meditation was to calm down one's heart. This was the first step to becoming a god. In other words, Dan Wangkai hadn't really started to understand the profound meaning of becoming a god. What's going on? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. After so many years, why was he still at the first step? Wait, after so many years, Qin Feiyong couldn't help but smile bitterly. Many years had indeed passed in the castle. However, the Black Tortoise world's time laws were the same as the outside world. As for Dan Wangkai, it was only after he entered the ancient world that he started cultivating in seclusion. After breaking through to the peak 9-star combat Emperor realm, he came to the Black Tortoise world to comprehend the profundity of ascension. In other words, Dan Wangkai had only been in the Black Tortoise world for a few days. How could he possibly comprehend the profound meaning of becoming a deity in just a few days? One had to know that back then, even he had taken half a year to comprehend it. Good luck, Qin Feiyong murmured. Without Dan Wangkai by his side, he instantly felt the pressure double. Because Dan Wangkai was not here, he had to personally refine the pills. Although refining pills was simple, it was actually the most time-consuming and exhausting laborious work. Buzz. Suddenly, the image crystal buzzed. Qin Feiyong took out the image crystal, and Gongzi Feng's shadow condensed. Big Brother Jiang, I have already secretly revealed the news of you entering the Nine-Heaven Palace to Feng Zijuan. Gongzi Feng immediately laughed. So fast, Qin Feiyong was stunned. Of course we have to be efficient. Moreover, the person we are targeting is Feng Zijuan, so we definitely can't be negligent. Gongzi Feng chuckled. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but laugh and asked, then what was his reaction? His reaction is funny. First, he was surprised. Then he looked like he was going to bite someone. Gongzi Feng said. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, coincidentally, there are a few things that I would like to ask you about. You're being too polite by saying that you're asking for advice. If you have any questions, just say it. As long as I know, I won't hide anything. Gongzi Feng said. Qin Feiyong said, who is this lunatic from the outer sect? Lunatic? Gongzi Feng was stunned and frowned. Are you talking about the lunatic who occupies a sword peak by himself? Qin Feiyong nodded. How do you know him? Gongzi Feng was shocked. I am living with him now. Not long ago, after you sent me a message, I had a small conflict with him. Qin Feiyong was helpless. Gongzi Feng was stunned. Qin Feiyong frowned. Who is this person? Gongzi Feng came back to his senses and said in a low voice, Big Brother Jiang, you can't provoke this person. If there was a conflict just now, you have to apologize to him. Is it that serious? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. It's more serious than what I said. This lunatic is an extremely belligerent person. Anyone who is targeted by him can't escape even if they want to. Moreover, his character is very irritable. Doesn't the Nine-Heaven Palace have a rule that forbids fighting? But this rule is useless against this person. As long as his temper flares up, regardless of the occasion, he will immediately start a fight. Gongzi Feng said, he's so reckless. Don't the higher-ups care about it? Qin Feiyong frowned. Care? Gongzi Feng shook his head and smiled. No one dares to care. Why do you say so? Qin Feiyong was suspicious. This lunatic's real name, identity, and strength are all a mystery. No one knows. Even my grandfather and the others know nothing about it. It is said that he grew up in the Nine-Heaven Palace and was very naughty when he was young. In the past, there were many elders who wanted to punish him because of anger, but every time when they wanted to punish him, the great elder would personally come forward and plead for him. Gongzi Feng said, the great elder pleaded for him? Qin Feiyong's expression was dazed. This was really beyond his expectations. However, although the great elder has helped him time and time again, neither that madman nor the great elder himself have revealed their relationship. As a result, many people are guessing whether this lunatic is the great elder's illegitimate son, or maybe he is the great elder's disciple. In short, there are different opinions. Gongzi Feng said. Qin Feiyong was stunned and shook his head with a smile. This Nine-Heaven Palace is really an interesting place. Interesting? I'm afraid only you would think so. Gongzi Feng shook his head. Qin Feiyong said, let's not talk about the lunatic first. Do you know about the Nine-Heaven Palace's cemetery? What? Cemetery? Gongzi Feng's eyes widened and he said in shock, Brother Jiang, why are you asking about this? Qin Feiyong said, I heard that there are death fruit and soul wood in the Nine-Heaven Palace's cemetery. My dear brother, even if there are these herbs in the cemetery, you can't have any ideas about the cemetery. That's a forbidden area of our nine-heaven palace. Let me tell you this, if you are discovered, even if you are the great elder's son, you can forget about leaving alive. The resource hall has the death fruit and soul wood. Why do you want to go further? Gong Zifeng was speechless. I also thought about it. But with my relationship with your grandfather, going to the resource hall is tantamount to asking for humiliation, Qin Feiyang said. That's true. Gong Zifeng nodded and frowned. Then you can also go to the treasure hall? I don't have so many divine gems on me now. Qin Feiyang was helpless. If you don't have divine gems, you can slowly earn them. Gong Zifeng was somewhat helpless. Without divine gems, he wanted to go to the cemetery? Wasn't he eating a leopard's guts? Wait a minute. Listening to this person's tone, it seemed that he couldn't wait. Gong Zifeng asked, Are you in urgent need of these two things? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. I got it. Don't go to the cemetery. Leave this matter to me. After Gong Zifeng finished speaking, he turned off the image crystal. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Obviously, Gong Zifeng wanted to help him get soul wood and death fruit. To be honest, he really didn't mean that. However, if Gong Zifeng could really get soul wood and death fruit, it would be a great help to him. Putting away the image crystal, Qin Feiyang left the Black Tortoise realm and appeared in the cave. At this moment, a young man in black stood outside the door, pacing back and forth. After a while, the young man in black gritted his teeth and knocked hard on the stone door. Qin Feiyang, who was inside the cave, was stunned, and with a wave of his hand, the stone door quickly opened. It's you? Qin Feiyang was surprised. The young man in black looked at Qin Feiyang with some fear and asked, Senior Brother Jiang, can I come in? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Sure, come in. The young man in black was Ma Guang. Ma Guang heard and immediately ran into the cave. Qin Feiyang asked with a smile, Senior brother, what's the matter? Ma Guang quickly waved his hand and said, Don't call me that, just call me by my name. My name is Ma Guang. Qin Feiyang became more and more suspicious. Why did this person suddenly become so polite? Ma Guang looked outside the cave warily and said in a low voice, Brother Jiang, can we close the door and talk? Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and waved his hand again, and the stone door quickly closed again. Ma Guang said, Brother Jiang, to be honest, I have been struggling with this matter for a long time before I decided to tell you. What's so serious? Qin Feiyang frowned. Ma Guang said in a deep voice, It's about Chengli, which is our outer sect elder. Chengli? Qin Feiyang stared blankly for a moment before his interest was piqued. Ma Guang said, He is asking about your situation, and also asked me to secretly monitor you and Frenzy. Monitor? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Brother Jiang, don't be angry. I was completely forced to do this. At that time, when I went to get the identity token, he threatened me that if I didn't agree, I would definitely suffer in the future. Ma Guang panicked. It's understandable. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly and asked doubtfully, Then why did you secretly tell me? To be honest, I don't dare to offend Chengli, but I also don't dare to offend you in Frenzy. So, after thinking about it, I decided to tell you the truth. Ma Guang sighed. Qin Feiyang patted Ma Guang's shoulder and said with a smile, It's been hard on you. Thank you for your understanding, Brother Jiang. Then, Brother Jiang, how should we deal with this matter? After all, Chengli is an outer sect elder, and he controls the fate of us outer sect disciples. We really can't afford to offend him. Ma Guang was melancholic. What else can we do? You can only listen to him, monitor me in Frenzy, and report everything to him truthfully. Qin Feiyang smiled. Ma Guang said, But, Qin Feiyang said, Don't worry, since you are so honest, I definitely won't blame you. Brother Jiang is really benevolent and righteous. But Frenzy, you also know that Frenzy's character. If he knows that I am monitoring him, I am afraid that even if I don't die, I will lose a layer of skin. Ma Guang was worried. As for Frenzy, if there is a chance, I will help you talk to him. Although this person is belligerent, he should be a reasonable person. Qin Feiyang smiled. Chapter 1996. Hearing this, Ma Guang was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Brother Jiang. If you need any help in the future, please let me know." "That's what you said. Don't go back on your word." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Once a word has been spoken, it cannot be taken back." Ma Guang patted his chest and vowed. But after thinking for a while, he smiled and said, "Of course, Brother Jiang. You can't ask me to do something that will get me killed." Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. "Although I asked you to report truthfully, there are some things that you need to think about." "Understood." Ma Guang nodded. It was obvious that Jiang Chun was telling him to say what he should say and not say what he shouldn't say. Qin Feiyang's eyes carried a trace of a smile. Ma Guang was indeed a smart man. Maybe he could buy him over and use him. Of course, he didn't want to keep Ma Guang by his side. After all, the people and beasts around him already gave him a headache. After thinking for a while, Qin Feiyang glanced at Ma Guang's hands and found that he wasn't wearing an interspatial ring. So, he had an idea. He took out an interspatial ring and handed it to Ma Guang with a smile. "Brother Ma, this is a little gift from me. Please accept it." "This?" Ma Guang stared at the interspatial ring in shock. An interspatial ring was priced at 10 million divine gems in the treasure school. Even if an outer disciple had enough divine gems, he wouldn't be willing to buy an interspatial ring with 10 million divine gems. So, outer sect disciples basically used Qinkuan bags. Qin Feiyang stuffed the interspatial ring into Ma Guang's hands and said with a smile, "Just a little gift from me. Don't mind it." "No, no, no." Ma Guang quickly waved his hands and was overjoyed. What a windfall. And for Qin Feiyang, an interspatial ring was nothing. Because this time, Nie Yun and the other 5's interspatial rings all fell into his hands. In other words, including the one he gave to Fire Lotus, he now had 8 interspatial rings. Whoosh! Just as Ma Guang happily put away the universe ring and was about to thank Qin Feiyang, a woman wearing a mask landed in front of the cave with a piercing sound. Then, without knocking on the door, she directly pushed open the stone door and entered the cave. It was the Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus was stunned when she saw Ma Guang. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Brother Ma, I still have some matters to attend to, so I won't see you out." "All right." Ma Guang nodded and tactfully turned around to leave. What is he doing here? After Ma Guang left, Fire Lotus closed the stone door and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. "This Chengli is indeed a treacherous villain." Fire Lotus snorted coldly as a cold light flashed in her eyes. "Let's not talk about him for now. Where's the alchemy fire and alchemy furnace?" Qin Feiyang looked at the Fire Lotus expectantly. However, Fire Lotus lowered her head, her eyes full of anger and self-blame. Qin Feiyang's eyelids twitched as he asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" "I'm useless. I couldn't buy the alchemy fire and alchemy furnace." Fire Lotus said, "Why didn't you buy them?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "Shangguanxiu won't sell them. She also told us not to go to the treasure pavilion to look for her in the future." Fire Lotus said angrily. "Won't sell them?" Qin Feiyang frowned. The treasure pavilion was open for business. How could they do such a thing? "It's true. I asked her the reason, but she didn't say anything. If I didn't leave, I would probably be chased out by her." Hua Lian's face was filled with anger. "That's strange. What's the reason? Could it be that she's dissatisfied with the negotiation last time?" Qin Feiyang mumbled. "But even if the negotiation failed, it shouldn't be that bad." Fire Lotus said, "Qin Dage, do you want me to go again?" "No need. Since Shangguanxiu has already rejected it, it's useless no matter how many times you go." Qin Feiyang shook his head and then looked at Fire Lotus, whose eyes were full of self-blame, and said with a smile, "You don't have to blame yourself. There must be another reason for this." Hearing this and looking at the smile on Qin Feiyang's face, Fire Lotus felt much better. "You didn't buy the teleportation altar?" Qin Feiyang asked. Fire Lotus nodded. "Is this considered a ban on me?" "Interesting." Qin Feiyang smiled, but there was a trace of anger in his eyes. Negotiating a deal was a very common thing. After all, it was a deal. Both parties had to be satisfied. But because of this, the treasure pavilion had banned him. He would remember this debt. Right. When I came back just now, I met a middle-aged man near the Sword Peak. He asked me to give this to you. Well, Yin suddenly thought of something. She took out a neatly folded piece of paper from her bosom and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He took the note and asked suspiciously, "What's written on it?" "I didn't read it." Fire Lotus shook her head. Qin Feiyang opened the note and was immediately stunned. There were only 7 words on the note. Find out the truth. The remaining 4 words were a name. Shangguan Fenglan. What does this mean? Fire Lotus was also stunned when she saw the content of the note. Find out the truth. Shangguan Fenglan. Qin Feiyang murmured. Suddenly, a light flashed in his eyes. Then, he clenched his fist and the note was immediately crushed. Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang looked at the Fire Lotus and said with a sigh, "Lass, the deep meaning hidden in these few words isn't simple." "Not simple?" Fire Lotus frowned. "Find out the truth?" "What truth?" "The truth, of course, is that I slandered Jyotian Palace. In other words, this Shangguan Fenglan already knew that I was framed," Qin Feiyang said. Fire Lotus was slightly stunned. She was pleasantly surprised. This is a good thing. Finally, someone can clear our name. A good thing? I don't think so. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Why? Fire Lotus was puzzled. Since Shangguan Fenglan knows that we've been wrongly accused, she must also know who's framing us. But why didn't she say it directly? And when we were on the stairway, she didn't mention it at all. Instead, she forced us to apologize. And now, she wants us to investigate the truth ourselves. Girl, this matter is not simple. Qin Feiyang said. Fire Lotus guessed. Maybe she doesn't have any evidence, so she wants us to investigate it ourselves? Even if she doesn't have any evidence, she can clear our name first. But she didn't do that. Do you know what this means? It means that she wants to deal with Feng Wenhai. Qin Feiyang said solemnly. What? Fire Lotus was shocked. She said angrily, if that's the case, then isn't she using us? Yes, she is using us. Qin Feiyang nodded. Is there a need for that? She is the hall master of the tribunal hall. Isn't it easy for her to deal with Feng Wenhai? Fire Lotus frowned. But don't forget that Feng Wenhai's father is the hall master of the resource hall. He controls all the resources of Empyrean Palace. In terms of status in Empyrean Palace, the two can be said to be equal. With such a powerful background, Shangguan Fenglan dares to deal with Feng Wenhai openly? Qin Feiyang sneered. She doesn't dare, and she can't use us. With our little strength, how can we win against Feng Wenhai? Fire Lotus was furious. This was simply pushing them into a fire pit. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. That's why I said this matter isn't simple. Empyrean Palace isn't as peaceful as we think. Then what do you plan to do? Fire Lotus was worried. You know why I joined Empyrean Palace, so I don't want to get involved in this mess. Even if I have to bear the crime of slandering Empyrean Palace, even if everyone looks at me strangely, I don't care, Qin Feiyang said. Then should we go and refuse? Fire Lotus said. Refuse? Girl, you're too naive. If we really refuse, I'm afraid not only Feng Yuan, but also Shangguan Fenglan will fall out with us. What kind of situation will we face at that time? You should be able to imagine. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Fire Lotus said angrily, we can't do this, and we can't do that. Are we just going to be used by her? Don't worry. Don't you know me? Without a price, how can I help her? Don't worry about this matter. I'll deal with it. Qin Feiyang comforted. What about the alchemy fire and alchemy furnace? Fire Lotus asked. That's even simpler. The person the treasure pavilion wants to ban is me. When the time comes, I'll ask old Zhao and old Tang to go. Won't it be solved? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That's true. Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai haven't seen each other since they entered the ancient world. No matter how powerful Shangguan Qiu is, he definitely won't know it's your people. Fire Lotus said in realization. Smart. Qin Feiyang smiled. You've already said it so clearly. If I still don't understand, then I'm a pig. After Fire Lotus finished speaking, she suddenly seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, "By the way, when I came back just now, I saw a lunatic." "Really?" Qin Feiyong was surprised. "Yes. When I came back, he just came out of cave abode number 1. But he was too fast, so I didn't see his face clearly." Fire Lotus said, "He's indeed a battle maniac. He can't wait for a moment." Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. "From what you said, you seem to know that he's going out." Fire Lotus said in surprise, "I know a little. I'm going out for a while. I might not be back until very late. Don't run around because Gongzi Feng might send someone to find me." Qin Feiyong smiled mysteriously and reminded her softly. "Very late?" Fire Lotus was surprised and asked suspiciously, "What are you going to do?" "I'll tell you when I come back," Qin Feiyong said. Being so mysterious is definitely not a good thing. Fire Lotus pursed her lips and reminded, "You can't open the altar in the 9th Heaven Palace. You have to go out through the Heaven Stairway." "Can't open the altar?" Qin Feiyong was surprised. "Yes. When I went to the Treasure Pavilion, I wanted to open the altar and teleport directly, but I found that I couldn't, so I went out to ask around. It's just as Gao Xiaolong said. There's an invisible barrier around the 9th Heaven Palace that can block the altar's teleportation. You can only go in and out through the Heaven Stairway." Fire Lotus explained. "I see." Qin Feiyong nodded in realization and reached out his hand. "Give me the divine crystals." Fire Lotus took out a universe pouch and handed it to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong grabbed the universe pouch and teleported out of the cave abode at lightning speed, flying toward the Heaven Stairway. When he walked down the Heaven Stairway and passed by the white-haired old man, Qin Feiyong glanced at the white-haired old man. Then, he opened a teleportation altar and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1997. Sky Dragon City. Outside the city, in a dense forest, Qin Feiyong appeared out of thin air. Following closely, with a wave of his hand, 2 middle-aged men appeared. It was Zhao Tailai and Tang Hai. "Greetings, young master." The two bowed. Qin Feiyong asked, "Did you hear the conversation between Fire Lotus and I?" "Yes." The two nodded. "Good. The divine crystals are all inside. Go to the treasure pavilion. You must complete the mission." Qin Feiyong threw the Qinkuan bag to the two of them. "Yes." The two of them respectfully responded and turned to walk towards Sky Dragon City. After watching the two of them leave, Qin Feiyong opened another altar and quickly left. With Tang Hai and Zhao Tailai handling things, he was at ease. Sky Dragon Sea. On the coast, a black-clothed youth stood proudly on a huge rock with his hands behind his back. He was about 1.8 meters tall, with a jade-like appearance, eyes like pearls, and 2 thick eyebrows, like a knife, made his eyes look extremely sharp. Woo-woo. Waves of sea breeze blew. A head of thick black hair wantonly fluttered behind him. He was like a god, with an extraordinary temperament, and the aura he exuded was extremely terrifying. And on his chest, there was also a flame pattern. Swish. A white-clothed youth suddenly appeared in the sky. On his clothes, there was also a flame pattern. The white-clothed youth glanced around, lowered his head to look at the black-clothed youth standing on the huge rock and laughed. "You are indeed here?" The black-clothed youth looked up and grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth, and said, "Didn't we agree to meet at night? Didn't you already come? Then I naturally can't let you wait here." The white-clothed youth laughed. "Ha ha." The black-clothed youth laughed and said, "After the agreement, I really couldn't stay in the cave, so I decided to come first." "That's right." These two people, one was Qin Feiyong, the other was the madman in cave number 1. And at that time, the madman gave Qin Feiyong a note, was actually a challenge, as well as the coordinates of this place. Originally, they made an appointment for the evening, but when he heard Fire Lotus say that madman had left the cave, Qin Feiyong guessed that he must have come here. As expected, he couldn't even wait for half a day. Just how battle-hungry was this guy? "Actually, I'm quite surprised too," Madman said again. "What accident?" Qin Feiyong was suspicious. "Originally, I thought that you would reject my challenge, But I didn't expect that you would agree without hesitation, Madman said. If it were anyone else, I would definitely refuse, because I'm not interested in such a boring and meaningless game. But for a battle maniac like you, I can't refuse, because if I don't agree, you will definitely not stop. So, I might as well fight with you, so that I can have some peace in the future, Qin Feiyong said helplessly. Haha. The madman laughed loudly and said, Do you hate people like me? A little. Qin Feiyong did not deny it. I like your straightforward personality. Follow me. Madman took a step forward and rushed into the endless sea without looking back. And? Qin Feiyong frowned and chased after him, asking, Isn't it here? This place is too close to the Nine Heavens Palace. I don't want anyone to come and cause trouble when I'm fighting, Madman said. Qin Feiyong was a little helpless. The two of them, one in front and one behind, cut through the sky and went deep into the Sky Dragon Sea. Isn't that Madman? Why did he come to the Sky Dragon Sea? And the person next to him, he also seems a little familiar. Wait, he seems to be the fierce person who cheated Feng Zijuan. That's right, it's him, Zhang Haoyan. Why would these two people enter the Sky Dragon Sea together? Let's go and take a look. Along the way, Qin Feiyong and Madman met many people. These people were basically disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace, training at the edge of the Sky Dragon Sea. About half an hour passed. Behind the two of them, at least 200 to 300 people followed. This made Qin Feiyong involuntarily frown. Madman glanced at Qin Feiyong's expression, turned around, stared at those disciples and shouted, Scram at once, otherwise, I'll destroy you all. Hearing this, the 200 to 300 people immediately dispersed in an uproar. Their expressions were filled with fear. Impressive. Qin Feiyong looked at Madman in admiration and said with a smile. Madman smiled smugly and continued to rush forward. The sea was very calm. The warm sun and refreshing sea breeze made people feel especially comfortable, and along the way, they did not see a single sea beast. It was very hard to imagine that such a peaceful Sky Dragon Sea would be the northern domain's largest forbidden area. Don't underestimate this place. Although we didn't see any sea beasts, they are looking at us. It's just that with me around, they don't dare to show their heads, Madman said. Qin Feiyong was stunned and immediately released his divine sense, surging towards the sea below. Sure enough, under the sea, there were countless sea beasts staring at them. He was even more shocked. Just how terrifying was this madman's strength? Even these ferocious sea beasts were so afraid of him. Basically, all the sea beasts in this sea have been beaten up by me, Madman suddenly said, causing Qin Feiyong's jaw to almost drop. If that was really the case, then this guy in front of him was undoubtedly a madman. How far is it? Qin Feiyong calmed down the shock in his heart and asked. We're almost there, Madman said without turning his head. About 100 breaths later, an island gradually entered Qin Feiyong's sight. That island was huge, and even with Qin Feiyong's current cultivation, he couldn't see the end. It was like a continent standing on the sea. That island is shaped like a sea turtle, so I named it Turtle King Island. Turtle King Island is our battlefield, and ordinary opponents are not qualified to step into Turtle King Island, Madman said. In that case, I have to feel honored? Qin Feiyong was stunned. You should indeed feel honored, because you are the third person to step onto this island, Madman said. While talking, the two had already entered the sky above Turtle King Island, but Madman didn't stop and continued to fly towards the depths of the island. Third? Then who were the first two? Qin Feiyong asked suspiciously. The first person is naturally me, because Turtle King Island is my exclusive battlefield. Without my permission, not to mention the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace, even elder-level figures don't dare to step into this place. The second person is a woman called Feng Zihan, the #1 expert on the heaven list. Madman said. Feng Zihan, Qin Feiyong murmured. Isn't this woman the elder sister of young noble Feng? And she seems to be the master of the Jade Zither Pavilion. Qin Feiyong asked calmly, You fought with Feng Zihan before? And Madman nodded. Then how is her strength? In the end, did you win, or did she win? Qin Feiyong was curious. How can the number one on the heaven list be weak? As for the end, I lost, Madman said. Number one on the heaven list? Qin Feiyong frowned. This so-called heaven list, he really didn't know what the situation was. Everyone on the heaven list is an existence that all the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace look up to. There are only a total of 10 people on the heaven list. Being on the heaven list is not only a proof of strength, but you can also get more resources. Let's put it bluntly. Those who are on the heaven list are the future Palace Master, Vice Palace Master, and the candidates for the top 10 elders, Madman said. Qin Feiyong was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the heaven list to be so valuable. What about the Earth list? Qin Feiyong asked again. The Earth list is a bit inferior. However, they are also candidates for the future Palace Master, Madman said. Qin Feiyong was secretly speechless. Madman suddenly grinned and said with disdain, "Actually, it's not a big deal." Qin Feiyong was stunned. Madman said, "What candidates? What resources? I don't care about it." Even if you don't care about it, there are a lot of people who care about it. Qin Feiyong was speechless. Madman said in disdain, "Those people are all idiots. Isn't it good to be free in life?" Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. He didn't expect this person to have such an indifferent temperament. It's really rare. Hold on. You just said that those who are on the heaven list can get more resources. How much is this more? Qin Feiyong asked. How should I put this? Madman pondered for a while and said, let's put it this way. The number one on the heaven list can receive 1 million soul stones every month. What? 1 million? Qin Feiyong was dumbfounded. As an outer disciple, he could only receive 10 soul stones every month. 10 soul stones and 1 million soul stones. How many times was the difference? It was 100,000 times. Many people would often say that there was a huge difference between the two of them. At this moment, Qin Feiyong truly experienced this difference. We're here. Just as Qin Feiyong was in a daze, Madman's voice sounded. Qin Feiyong was taken aback and quickly came back to his senses. He looked around. This should be the center of Turtle King Island. The entire Turtle King Island was filled with mountains and rivers, but not a single blade of grass grew. It was filled with a desolate aura. There was no trace of a sea beast. There was dead silence all around. Madman took a step forward and landed half a mile away. He turned to face Qin Feiyong and said, Are you ready? Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and nodded to Madman. Boom. Madman was the first to erupt with an aura. But this aura was only at the level of a low-level war god. What are you doing? Qin Feiyong was suspicious. Since it's a spar, it naturally has to be fair. Now, whether it is my divine power or the strength of my body, they are all suppressed to the same level as you. In addition, in this spar, we won't use divine weapons. We will rely on our own methods. Madman said, What about divine arts and battle souls? Qin Feiyong asked. Of course. Madman nodded. The corner of Qin Feiyong's mouth lifted slightly, and he said with a smile, Then you might lose. Haha. Madman suddenly laughed out loud. His eyes suddenly became sharp like blades as he said word by word, As long as you have the ability. Boom. Qin Feiyong didn't say anything else as divine power surged out. Chapter 1998. Shua. Just as Qin Feiyong released his aura, the madman took a step forward and arrived in front of Qin Feiyong, slapping out with his palm. Qin Feiyong moved his feet and easily avoided it. Seeing that Qin Feiyong didn't fight head-on, the madman couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He turned around and clenched his fist, punching towards Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong's figure flashed again and again. In the same realm, he wasn't afraid of anyone, including speed. What do you mean? The madman was furious. Divine power surged out and blocked all of Qin Feiyong's escape routes. Then, he punched towards Qin Feiyong. This scene seemed to be out of Qin Feiyong's expectations. He looked slightly flustered. He hurriedly raised his arm and slapped out. Seeing Qin Feiyong finally make a move, the madman's eyes flashed with anticipation. Yes, he was looking forward to the appearance of the golden light, which was the return formula. However, the golden light he was looking forward to did not appear. The fist and palm met in an instant. Humph! Qin Fei Yang let out a muffled groan as his body shook. Immediately after, he was like a meteorite, smashing into the mountains below. Boom! A majestic mountain range that was thousands of feet tall collapsed in an instant. The madman was stunned. What about the golden light? Below, Qin Fei Yang climbed out of the dust. His face was as pale as paper. He looked up at the madman and said, "You won?" "Won?" The madman's face was dull. Immediately after, a monstrous anger roared out. The madman roared, "What kind of joke is this? Who was the one who confidently said that I might lose? Now it's over? Do you think I'm stupid? Why don't you pretend a bit more?" "I'm not pretending." Qin Fei Yang shook his head. "Then tell me, why didn't the golden light that reflected my divine power in the morning appear? Such a heaven-defying method hasn't even been used yet, and you dare to admit defeat? Do you really think I'm a fool?" The madman's hair stood up in anger. His body was full of hostility. Don't misunderstand. That golden light is indeed very powerful, but it can only be used once a day, Qin Fei Yang said. Once? The madman raised his eyebrows. Yes. Qin Fei Yang nodded. Then we'll wait. Let's spar tomorrow, the madman said. What? Qin Fei Yang looked at madman in shock. He thought that the madman would stop after hearing this, but he didn't expect that he still wanted to fight. That's right. He came here purely as a show to satisfy his desires as a battle desire. But now, he still didn't stop. There was still didn't still. This was a bit was this madman, simply sat cross-legged in the air. He looked at Qin Fei Yang and coldly snorted. Before dawn, none of us are allowed to leave Turtle King Island. Restricting my freedom? Qin Fei Yang raised his eyebrows. But the madman didn't pay attention to him and closed his eyes. Qin Fei Yang frowned. It seemed that he couldn't avoid this battle. Madman. Qin Fei Yang suddenly spoke. The madman still ignored him. Qin Fei Yang's eyes flashed with a cold light as he slapped out with his palm, golden light rolling out. The madman suddenly opened his eyes and they flickered. Qin Fei Yang said, "Since you insist on fighting, then I'll accompany you. But there has to be a prize. Are you playing with me?" The madman turned a deaf ear and stared at Qin Fei Yang, his eyes full of killing intent. Playing with you? There's no need for that. I just don't want to do something meaningless. Qin Fei Yang shook his head. As long as you're willing to go all out, I can satisfy you. The madman raised the corner of his mouth and laughed. Sure enough, you're a battle maniac. If you lose to me, you have to do something for me unconditionally. Similarly, if I lose to you, I have to do something for you as well. Qin Fei Yang said. No need. If you lose to me, you have to give me that technique that can reflect divine power. The madman said. Deal. Qin Fei Yang nodded. Haha, straightforward enough, confident enough. Let's fight. The madman laughed, and with surging divine power, he threw a punch at Qin Fei Yang. Qin Fei Yang didn't dodge anymore. He took a step into the sky and threw a punch at the madman. Neither of them used divine power. Boom. The two fists collided with a loud bang. A destructive aura, like a tide, surged out in all directions with the two as the center. The surrounding void was crazily shattered. Both of their eyes revealed a trace of surprise at the same time. The madman said, You've tempered your body? Yes. Qin Fei Yang nodded and said, You've tempered your body too? Yes. The madman nodded. The two laughed at the same time, waved their fists, and began a physical battle. Bang, bang, rumble. The sound of fists colliding was like thunder from the 9 heavens, resounding in all directions. Outside Turtle King Island, above the sea, a group of people gathered here, looking at Turtle King Island curiously. These people were the disciples of 9 Heaven Palace that were driven away before. But later, they quietly followed behind. They had already sensed the battle fluctuations inside. But because Turtle King Island was too big and Qin Fei Yang and the madman were in the central area of Turtle King Island, they couldn't see the situation inside. Why are they fighting? You still don't know the temper of the madman. Who can escape from him? But then again, for Jiang Haoyan to be invited to Turtle King Island by the madman, his strength definitely can't be underestimated. I used to think that this person had an undeserved reputation, but now it seems that he really has some ability. Aren't you talking nonsense? Is Turtle King Island a place that ordinary people can enter? In the past, only Feng Zihan had entered. Feng Zihan, that's the #1 powerhouse on the heaven list. Even some elders are inferior to her. Even now, I still remember that the last time the madman and Feng Zihan fought here for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, even the great elder was alarmed. And this Jiang Haoyan is the second person to enter Turtle King Island after Feng Zihan. Do you think his strength is simple? I just don't know how long Jiang Haoyan can last in front of the madman this time. Everyone was discussing. They all wanted to enter Turtle King Island and watch the battle up close. But no one dared to take half a step forward. Haha, awesome, awesome. In the sky above the center of the island, the madman laughed loudly as he attacked mercilessly. Qin Feiyong also went all out. The power of his physical body poured out like a torrent. However, after countless rounds of collision, neither of them had any injuries. The madman said, "It's about time to warm up." Yes, it's time to get serious. Qin Feiyong nodded his head. Boom. The two released their divine power at the same time. The madman's divine power was blood red, as if it was condensed from blood. It dyed the world red and emitted a monstrous evil aura. Qin Feiyong used the power of fire, turning into a sea of fire that swept in all directions. This world was like a big furnace in an instant. The two divine powers carried a destructive aura as they roared in the sky and fiercely collided together. Boom. The world lost its color, and the void was annihilated. The two retreated at the same time. Qin Feiyong's face turned pale. A stream of blood rushed to his throat, but he swallowed it back down. The purple gold dragon blood must not be exposed, and the madman naturally didn't need to hide it. Wisps of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. I really didn't misjudge you. You are a powerhouse worthy of a battle. The madman wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The boiling battle intent became even more terrifying. Thank you for the compliment. Qin Feiyong smiled, but in his eyes, there was a bright light. This battle couldn't be in a stalemate. He had to end it quickly. Otherwise, with the madman's strength, he would definitely be injured. Clang. One after another, sword shadows appeared out of nowhere. Guiyuan sword technique. A total of 70 sword shadows, sharp enough to tear the world apart. Without any hesitation, Qin Feiyong waved his hand and the 70 sword shadows slashed towards the madman. Divine technique? The madman paused for a moment, then his face was filled with disdain. A mere low-grade divine technique can't hurt me. He didn't even activate his divine technique and directly took a step forward. His face was filled with confidence. Boom. Madman punched out with a powerful aura, instantly shattering a large portion of the 70 sword shadows. Actually, Qin Feiyong also knew that low-grade divine techniques couldn't pose a threat to the madman, because the madman's body was as strong as his. With the strength of their bodies, they could even crush middle-grade divine artifacts. And the grade of divine artifacts and divine techniques corresponded. Low grade against low grade, middle grade against middle grade, high grade against high grade, perfect grade against supreme grade. So even if someone of the same level used a middle grade divine technique, they couldn't hurt them. Even if it was a high grade divine technique or high grade divine artifact, they could still fight with their bodies. Knowing that it wouldn't work but still doing this, it wasn't that Qin Feiyong was stupid, he had a purpose. Although the madman seemed simple-minded, as a battle maniac, he had more battle experience than anyone else. For people like this, as long as they entered a battle state, whether it was their perception or their senses, they would all be focused. In short, on the surface, he seemed careless, but in reality, he was always on guard. So, Qin Feiyong wanted to make the madman careless and slowly underestimate him. As long as the madman was careless, he would quickly defeat him. In just a few blinks of an eye, the 70 sword shadows were all shattered. Qin Feiyang's blood boiled. Purple gold dragon blood rose to his throat several times, but he swallowed it back down. Boom. He raised his arm again, his index finger pointing in the air. An invisible force burst out. Void returning art. The current void returning art had transformed into a middle-grade divine technique. If it was in Great Qin or Forgotten Continent, a middle-grade divine technique would definitely be a treasure. But here, it wasn't anything. Especially in front of the madman, he could destroy it with a wave of his hand. You don't know my body and strength? This level of divine technique is useless against me. Can you be a bit more serious? The madman said angrily. He thought that Qin Feiyang was deliberately playing with him. Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to him and once again conjured the sun and moon eclipse. Still a middle-grade divine technique? The madman was furious. He leaped forward and instantly shattered it with a punch. He stared at Qin Feiyang and said gloomily, "If you continue like this, I will be angry." Literature Museum, you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.